Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Megan Newton. Megan Newton was born in 2001 to Michael and Sarah, and she also has a half-sister named Demi. Megan spends most of her time with her mother, Sarah. The two have a very close bond. They are like best friends, and Megan never hides anything from her mother. Sarah often consults her daughter on various important issues. Mother, she finds that Megan has shown wisdom beyond her years. Sarah describes her daughter as very ambitious, energetic, and easygoing. Megan's friends also describe her as humorous, compassionate, and thoughtful. Megan describes herself as having a heart of gold. Ever since she was a child, she has always been willing to help others. During her elementary school years, Megan became acquainted with a friend who had just moved from China to England. Because her English is limited and she often has difficulty learning and communicating, her teacher decides to assign Megan to help her new friend. Hoping that Megan's compassion and helpful nature will help her adapt quickly. Megan is very helpful and overcomes the language barrier to support her classmate. Megan's kindness and openness continued as she grew older, showing through her passion for sports, especially soccer. She joined the Stoke-on-Trent girls' soccer team and spent her weekends coaching girls under 7. Megan hopes to win a sports scholarship to the United States because she loves soccer and wants to pursue a career in the field. Megan even showed her love for the game by getting a small tattoo of a soccer boot. After completing her studies, Megan began her university journey with the goal of becoming a sports therapist or physiotherapist. This was a milestone as she was the first member of her family to attend a higher education institution. Megan Newton was a talented young student, ready for a bright future. Megan had been living an independent life, confident in her ability to plan and make decisions. She had moved into her own flat in a high-rise building on Fletcher Road. One night, Megan decided to go out with friends to a nightclub in Hanley. They spent the night dancing, drinking, and having fun. Early on Saturday morning, before 3 a.m., Megan took a taxi home with a friend and a young man. The next morning, a neighbor discovered a set of keys near the building with blood stains. These keys were handed to a housing officer, who noticed the blood splatter and decided to check on the occupants of the flat. When they entered the apartment with a neighbor, they witnessed a horrific scene. Megan's body was found on the bed, naked, bloody and lying face down. Megan had been stabbed multiple times with a kitchen knife, which was found near the scene of the murder. Identification documents identified the victim as Megan Newton, helping police identify the innocent young woman who was murdered in her bedroom. When the police arrived at the scene, they quickly informed Megan's family of the painful end. The family went to the morgue to identify their daughter. The police and forensics cordoned off the crime scene and collected vital information at Megan's apartment. The autopsy revealed the horrific extent of the attack she had suffered. Megan had been strangled, rendered unconscious, and then stabbed 9 times in the back, puncturing both lungs. There was also evidence of sexual assault. The fatal weapon, a kitchen knife, was found in Megan's home. The autopsy revealed that it was the stab wounds that led to Megan Newton's death. The bloody knife and apartment key were sent to the lab for forensic analysis, hoping to find the killer's DNA. It is suspected that the killer accidentally dropped the key when leaving Megan's apartment after the crime. Police began gathering information from Megan's acquaintances and relatives. Through this, they determined that Megan spent the evening at a club before calling a taxi home early in the morning. Police have been closely examining surveillance footage from the area near the nightclub and Megan's route home to track her final movements. Police are particularly interested in footage that shows Megan getting into a taxi with a friend and an unidentified young man. Another video from inside Megan's apartment complex showed the same young man as before, this time appearing on the premises. Fortunately, a camera was placed in a common hallway, giving police a clear view of the entrance to Megan's apartment, especially on the night of the crime. The police's goal is to identify the killer by carefully analyzing video footage from that night. At approximately 3:44 a.m., Megan and the young man she had shared a taxi with about an hour earlier entered the lobby of the apartment building. The two headed toward her apartment, with Megan appearing cheerful. When she reached the door, Megan used her key to unlock it and the two entered. The camera captured the moment as Megan unlocked the door. The young man standing behind her looked around the area, even looking into the camera. This behavior led the police to suspect that the young man may have intended to harm Megan. A closer look at video footage from the rest of that night revealed that the young man left the apartment the next morning at approximately 5:54 a.m. He attempted to leave the building but realized he did not have the key to the door. He returned to Megan's apartment, retrieved the key, and left. An outside surveillance camera captured him throwing an object, and a neighbor later discovered the apartment key was stained with blood. The camera also recorded him leaving the scene. He checked his hands and they appeared to be bloody. The police identified this young man as the main suspect. Police investigating the Megan Newton case investigated the surveillance footage and discovered that a man named Joseph Trevor had approached the nightclub, got into the same taxi as Megan, and then went to her apartment. Joseph Trevor is an 18-year-old boy from a family where both parents are police officers. He lives in a neighboring district and is Megan Newton's high school classmate. Joseph has good academic performance and a passion for sports, especially soccer. Joseph even won a sports scholarship to study in the United States and has played professional soccer for Newcastle. Those who know Joseph mostly consider him a kind, easygoing, and sociable person. But few people know that he has another side to his personality, which is erratic and unpredictable. Joseph can switch from being cheerful and engaging to being withdrawn, rude, and abrupt without any apparent reason. However, when the police investigated the Megan Newton case, they began to focus on Joseph's past. About 3 years ago, when Joseph was 15, he was accused by someone else of forcing a girl to have intimate contact, although the attempt was unsuccessful and Joseph was not charged or imprisoned, but many people at school knew about the incident. The police discovered that Joseph had also attended a party with friends the night before. They met at a bar, where Megan was also present. Although they knew each other from school, they only said hello and continued to enjoy their private time. However, Joseph did not stay at the bar for long. Security found him with a package of white powder suspected to be drugs, so they took him outside and called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they arrested Joseph and took him to a nearby police station. The police may have known that Joseph's parents were also police officers, so Joseph was released shortly thereafter. The police confiscated the ketamine and advised Joseph to return home and avoid using illegal drugs. Against the police's advice, Joseph did not return home. He went straight back to the club where Megan was. Joseph was then denied entry to the club. At 2:40 a.m., after Megan left the club, she ran into Joseph in the taxi queue. Joseph told Megan what had happened at the police station. Joseph expressed his concern about being scolded by his parents for drinking too much. And Joseph's parents were police officers, so they might have known about his arrest for illegal drug possession. Joseph felt anxious and did not know what to do next. Megan, out of kindness and willingness to help, lent Joseph her phone to try to contact a friend. However, Joseph could not find a place to stay for the night. When she found Joseph in a drunken and disorderly state, Megan invited Joseph to spend the night on her living room sofa. Megan and her friend took Joseph by taxi. On the way, Joseph texted his father, saying he had spent the night at a friend's house. When they arrived at the Fletcher Road apartment building, the taxi dropped Megan's friend off first. The taxi then took Megan and Joseph to the apartment building. The cameras captured them entering the building. Some time later, Joseph came out and threw the keys in the yard. Police believe that, during this time, Joseph brutally attacked Megan, leading to her tragic death. Joseph could not contest the charges because the evidence was clear. Joseph went to a bridge in Stoke-on-Trent and climbed onto the railing, sitting looking down at the pavement. It appeared that Joseph was about to jump to escape the consequences of his actions. However, Joseph had a history of depression and attempted suicide. Joseph had been found on this bridge before, when a passerby alerted the police. Joseph was taken to hospital for a psychological evaluation and was later determined to be safe to leave. He returned home under the supervision of his father. Joseph returned home and told his mother the whole truth. Joseph felt he could no longer keep the secret and realized the serious consequences of his actions. Joseph's mother immediately contacted the police to relay his confession. At that time, the police identified Joseph as the prime suspect through surveillance camera footage. They were on their way to arrest Joseph. When brought to the police station for questioning, Joseph admitted to having been to Megan's house that evening. However, he did not provide details about the attack. Joseph's account was consistent with the surveillance camera footage, which showed him entering her apartment. Joseph said that Megan voluntarily gave him the sofa. After the intercourse, Joseph suffered amnesia and had no recollection of subsequent events. Joseph maintained that the relationship between him and her was consensual and not assaultive. However, the police did not believe Joseph's story. They suspected that Joseph had deliberately erased important memories and that he was fully aware of his actions. The police believed that Joseph was fully conscious throughout. Joseph changed his story repeatedly. First, Joseph took partial responsibility for Megan's death. Then, Joseph admitted to killing Megan, but maintained that their sexual relationship was consensual. Joseph maintained this story until his trial on February 17, 2020. However, during the trial, Joseph unexpectedly pleaded guilty to all charges. Joseph was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving a minimum of 21 years. During the trial, Joseph turned to Megan's mother, Sarah, and said, "Sorry." This confession, by this point, no longer made sense, and it made her extremely angry. Apologies cannot fix the past or ease the pain Megan's family has endured while awaiting trial. Megan's best friend, Ricardo Eccles, shared that they had planned to go shopping in Manchester the day after Megan's death. Ricardo was devastated when he heard the news of Megan's sudden passing. The news shocked Ricardo. However, in memory of Megan, Ricardo started a fundraising campaign to help cover the funeral costs for Megan's family. Ricardo successfully raised some money, which was then given to Megan's mother. Megan has always been there for those in need, and now it's time for them to show their gratitude. Megan's family and loved ones need emotional support and help during this difficult time. Megan was a fan of Stoke City Football Club. During a match, the players and fans observed a minute's silence in her memory. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Candy Rogers. Candace Rogers, also known as Candy, was born on July 18, 1949, in Spokane, Washington. She was an only child in her family, and soon after she was born, her parents divorced. Despite this, Candy maintained a close relationship with her father. Her father lived in the same city, so she got to see him frequently. Candy was a bright and cheerful child who loved spending time outdoors with friends, exploring nature, and playing with her dog. She had a strong desire to join the Campfire Girls, a well-known organization that provided girls with opportunities to learn new skills, go on hikes, and form lasting friendships. In 1959, at the age of 9, Candy finally got the chance to join the Campfire Girls, and she was overjoyed. As a member of Campfire Girls, one of her responsibilities was to sell mints door-to-door in her neighborhood. The organization provided her with boxes of sweets to sell. On Friday, March 6th, Candy planned to sell mints after school. After returning home, having dinner, and playing with her dog, she packed 8 boxes of mints and set out around 4 p.m. Candy had a plan to go door-to-door in her neighborhood, offering sweets to her neighbors. To avoid duplicating efforts, she and the other girls in the area had assigned specific streets to visit. However, when Candy failed to return home by 6 p.m. as expected, her mom started to worry. As night began to fall, her mom and grandfather set out to search for her, scouring the neighborhood streets but finding no sign of Candy. Soon, some family friends and neighbors joined the search, but despite their combined efforts, no one could find any trace of Candy. At this point, her mom decided to call the police for assistance. By the time the police arrived, the streets were dark, and something might have happened to Candy. The police began their investigation by questioning the neighbors and soon discovered that Candy had only sold 1 box of mints, suggesting that something might have occurred shortly after she left her house. A resident reported suggesting that something might have occurred shortly after she left her house. A resident reported seeing a girl matching Candy's description on a nearby street around 6:30 p.m. This was unusual, as Candy's mother had already begun searching for her by that time. Candy's grandfather had a strange experience as well, which occurred when he searched for her on the very same street. He narrowly avoided being hit by a speeding green 1953 Ford, which struck the curb. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the license plate number. The police issued a detailed description of the vehicle and initiated a search, but so far they have not been able to locate it. Later, around 9 p.m., several mint boxes were found scattered along the road near a bridge. These boxes belonged to Candy, increasing concerns for her safety. The police focused their search in this area, thoroughly searching both riverbanks and a small wooded area on either side. Despite an all-night search, Candy was not found. By morning, news of her disappearance had spread through local newspapers. And soon the case was being covered by statewide media. In 1959, child disappearances near their homes were unusual because it happened extremely rarely. The townspeople were extremely worried about this. To resolve this alarming situation, police have stepped up search work. They added mounted police, all-terrain vehicles and helicopters and military personnel to thoroughly search the area. In addition, over 1,000 volunteers joined in the massive search from both local areas and nearby cities. It became one of the most extensive search operations at the time. Despite these efforts, they still could not locate Candy. Another incident that added to the trauma of the town was when a search helicopter struck power lines and crashed. As a result, 3 of its crew members died. However, police remained dedicated and relentless, operating 24/7 on this case. With so many investigations open, officers still tried everything. Throughout the case, nearly 750 initial leads turned up. Officers closely inspected every detail. Regrettably, these investigative trails did not help discover any definitive proof about Candy's. 2 weeks after Candy's disappearance, 2 military personnel from a local base went on a hunting trip in the woods west of Spokane. They stumbled upon children's shoes on the ground, which immediately reminded them of Candy's case. Since many military members had been involved in the search, they were familiar with the details of her disappearance. The military personnel reported their discovery to the police, who then showed the shoes to Candy's grandfather for identification. He confirmed that the shoes belonged to his granddaughter. The police quickly launched a search operation in the woods. Within minutes, an officer spotted a foot protruding from the bushes and discovered Candy's body. She was found lying in the underbrush, covered with pine branches. A medical examination revealed the cause of death was strangulation, also found marks on Candy's hands and feet, indicating that she had been bound. Although no ropes were found near the body. Furthermore, the medical experts concluded that Candy had been sexually abused. During the investigation, the police found a green car seat cover near the crime scene. Additionally, a small purple stain was discovered on Candy's clothing, which smelled like grape-flavored chewing gum. However, the police were unable to establish any connection between the stain and the crime. The police searched for any possible clues to find the killer. They examined incoming tips and investigated hundreds of individuals, including neighbors, suspicious characters, and previously convicted criminals. Their attention eventually turned to a 50-year-old man named Alfred Braves. Alfred became a suspect due to unusual circumstances. He took his own life on the same day Candy's body was discovered, in his car, near where the mint boxes were found. He also lived close to Candy's home. When police found Alfred's body, they discovered a rope and woman's hair pins in his car. After searching Alfred's house, police found numerous newspapers about sexual crimes against women and girls. They also learned that several women had accused him of harassment, and his wife suspected him of Candy's murder. However, investigators were unable to find any evidence directly linking Alfred to Candy's murder. Despite their reluctance, detectives had to eliminate him from the suspect list, as they did not have enough evidence to prove his guilt. As a result, they began investigating other suspects. Several months after the murder, the police had compiled an extensive list of suspects, but despite their diligent efforts, the investigation has made no new progress. Later, the investigators turned their attention to a new suspect, a serial killer named Hugh Morse. Hugh was arrested in 1961 for a string of crimes, and two factors made him a person of interest in Candy's case. Firstly, he was known for constantly chewing grape-flavored gum, which was similar to a substance found on Candy's clothing. Additionally, Hugh had killed two women in Spokane just a few months after Candy's death. Hugh's history of violence was also a concern. His first arrest was for assaulting a woman, but he received no serious consequences, merely being discharged from the army, where he was serving at the time. Hugh committed a string of robberies in Los Angeles, but only served 6 months in jail. After his release, he lured two 8-year-old girls to a secluded area with the promise of ice cream and then sexually assaulted them. Despite being arrested again, he managed to avoid prison time. A medical commission evaluated him and deemed him a sexual psychopath, leading to his placement in a mental health facility. 2 years later, doctors believed he was cured and released him from the facility. Hugh then moved to Spokane, where he began spying on women through their windows. In November 1959, Hugh broke into the home of a 28-year-old woman, assaulted her, and ultimately killed her. 10 months later, he entered the residence of a 69-year-old woman and repeated the same violent actions. A month after that, he attacked another woman, stabbing her multiple times, but she survived the assault. Hugh continued to travel from city to city, committing numerous crimes, including attacking women and girls with a knife, sexually assaulting them, and killing 2 more victims. His crimes eventually caught the attention of the FBI, and he was added to the list of the country's 10 most wanted criminals. He was eventually captured and sentenced to multiple life terms in prison. While serving his sentence, Hugh attempted to take his own life, but was saved by the prison guards and continued to serve out his sentence. Detectives investigating Candy's case visited him in prison multiple times, but he consistently denied any involvement in the crime. A polygraph test was also administered, which suggested he was telling the truth. However, lie detector test results are not considered reliable because their accuracy is only relative. Despite the lack of evidence, but investigators initially considered Hugh a primary suspect. Due to his background and the fact that he lived in Spokane at the time of the murder. However, he continued to deny any involvement, and police were unable to find any evidence to prove his involvement in the crime. The investigation then shifted focus to another suspect, 49-year-old Howard Barnett. He was arrested in February 1960 on suspicion of molesting a minor girl. Before taking his own life in his cell at the Spokane police station, Barnett wrote a cryptic message in his own blood on the wall, stating, "I have a sin before the Lord." Detectives then began investigating Barnett's potential involvement in the crime, but they were once again unable to find any evidence of his guilt. Howard remained a primary suspect in the case due to his proximity to Candy's residence. Despite years of investigation, police continued to follow new leads and examine other potential suspects. A woman eventually came forward claiming to have seen a green car following Candy on the day she disappeared. Police refocused on locating the vehicle, but this lead ultimately yielded no results. It was notable that the woman waited many years to share this information. The case was reopened at various times, but each time investigators reached a dead end. Throughout the investigation, police not only had to pursue new leads but also had to verify the validity of confessions. 13 people gave false confessions to the crime. However, none of them were able to provide specific details that only the actual killer would have known. Instead, they often repeated details previously reported in the media. High-profile cases often exhibit unexpected and surprising behaviors, such as false confessions. In the case of Candy's murder, numerous detectives worked on the case over time, but none were able to solve it. This crime stood out as one of the most prominent and mysterious in the city and state. Before the murder, parents felt safe letting their children play outside, but the case led many to reconsider their views on safety. Years later, in the early 2000s, the case was reopened, and a new detective decided to use modern technologies to re-examine the evidence. Fortunately, the police had carefully collected and preserved the evidence in 1959, including a sample of male semen on Candy's clothing. Despite being stored for decades, experts were able to re-examine the sample, although it extremely challenging due to its age. After a lengthy investigation, experts finally extracted a DNA profile from the evidence and uploaded it to the FBI database. However, a search of the database yielded no matches. Further cross-examination of the profile with numerous suspect samples also proved unsuccessful. For many years, suspicion fell on Hugh Morse, but forensic evidence revealed no link between him and the crime. This lack of progress brought the investigation to a halt once again. Although the police had the killer's DNA, they struggled to identify the perpetrator. In 2021, a new detective reopened the case and decided to employ a new approach: genetic genealogy. This innovative method had already solved numerous cold cases and offered hope for finally resolving the standing mystery surrounding Candy's murder. The detective reached out to multiple labs that specialized in this type of analysis but was met with disappointment once again. To use this method, experts needed the original DNA sample, which was a challenge. Several labs attempted to work with the semen sample, but each concluded that it had degraded too much, making it impossible to extract the necessary information. The detective then consulted the final lab, which led to a long-awaited important discovery. With the help of state-of-the-art tools, the experts were able to successfully analyze the sample and obtain the perpetrator's DNA profile. This profile is then uploaded to a genealogy database to begin searching for the DNA owner's relatives. After a thorough investigation involving thousands of individuals, researchers pinpointed one family as the likely source of the DNA sample. They discovered that the DNA probably belonged to one of 3 brothers, all of whom had passed away. However, the team found that one brother had a daughter, and the police reached out to her for assistance. The daughter was shocked by the possibility that her father might be the killer, but she immediately agreed to help. She provided a DNA sample, proving that she was closely related to the person whose semen was found on Candy's clothing. With this new information, detectives obtained a court order to exhume her father's remains. A DNA profile extracted from the remains revealed a complete match with the DNA found on Candy's clothing, identifying the killer as John Hoff, 62 years after the crime. Hoff had never been a suspect despite hundreds of others being investigated over the years. Detectives investigating Hoff's biography uncovered his involvement in multiple crimes. At the time of Candy's murder, Hoff was 20 years old and lived close to her house, less than a mile away. He was also a soldier in the army, stationed at a nearby base, where Candy's body was found. 2 years after the murder, Hoff attacked another woman, binding and sexually assaulting her before attempting to kill her. However, the woman survived the attack. Following his arrest, Hoff received a 6-month prison sentence and was dishonorably discharged from the army. After his release, Hoff started a family, having 2 sons and 2 daughters, and he living an ordinary life. He changed jobs several times and at one point, suffered a severe chemical burn to his face while working at a food packaging plant, leaving a scar to his face. Hoff's life ended in June 1970, 11 years after Candy's murder, when he took his own life without leaving a note. Further investigation revealed that Candy might have known Hoff, as she was friends with his 10-year-old sister at the time. Years later, Hoff's sister told detectives that she had cried in Hoff's arms after Candy's murder, unaware that he was the one responsible for Candy's death. Candy's parents did not live to see the day when the killer's identity was revealed. Her mother passed away in 2006, and her father had taken his own life in 1963, 4 years after the tragedy. The reason behind his death remains a mystery. There is speculation that he was unable to cope with the loss of his daughter. Despite this, the case was eventually solved, marking one of the longest investigations in history, spanning over 62 years and involving multiple detectives across different generations. At the press conference, where the killer's name was announced, only one officer who had worked on the case in 1959 was present. He expressed gratitude for having lived long enough to learn the truth. Hoff's daughter initially struggled to accept that her father had committed such a horrific crime. However, she eventually came to terms with the fact, referring to her father as a monster who took an innocent life. She expressed regret that he was not held accountable during his lifetime. A chilling coincidence is that Hoff took his own life when his daughter was 9 years old, the same age as Candy was when she was killed. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974, in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. As a single mother, she raised her son, Max Maxwell, after experiencing failed relationships in the past. Raising Max was challenging for Carrie. Despite her immense love for her child, she struggled with depression, which led to a period where she spent a month in bed. During this time, her mother, Nancy Rainey, took care of Max. Carrie's difficult relationship with Max's father and unstable living conditions contributed to her mental health issues. At the age of 20, Carrie's struggles led to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This condition causes extreme mood swings, ranging from euphoria, increased productivity, and excessive friendliness to depression, bitterness, and feelings of powerlessness. Although bipolar disorder significantly complicates daily life, Carrie's doctor found an effective treatment for her in the early 2000s. With this treatment, Carrie was able to manage her condition and live a relatively normal life. Whether Carrie wanted to settle her personal life is an open question. On one hand, what woman doesn't dream of a suitable partner? On the other hand, why commit to someone who might bring worries and misfortunes? Carrie was raised in a loving family and had an active lifestyle. She played sports and aspired to become a doctor. However, Her dreams were cut short during her first medical practice when she fainted at the sight of blood. Deciding not to risk her health or her patients, she pursued a career in programming instead. In the fall of 2012, Carrie received a job offer in Omaha with good prospects and decided to take it. However, her son Max was in middle school and preferred to stay in his familiar surroundings, so he remained with his grandmother in Macedonia. According to Amy, a friend of Carrie's father, Carrie had a radiant smile that drew attention whenever she entered a room. It was likely this quality that caught Dave Kropa's eye when they met at an auto repair shop in November 2012. As Carrie showed him something inside her car, a Ford Explorer, Dave felt an instant attraction. Their first date arrived soon after, but their time together was interrupted by numerous calls and messages from a woman named Liz, who eventually stopped by Dave's apartment to collect something she had left there earlier. Dave told Carrie about his past relationship with Liz, whom he met on a dating site 6 months prior. They had been together for a while, but he ended things because she was extremely clingy. Carrie was understanding and wasn't fazed by Liz's presence in Dave's apartment, recognizing that everyone has past relationships that can resurface. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie started dating Dave. They had discussed their expectations beforehand and agreed to a brief, casual affair. Liz, whose full name is Shaunana Elizabeth Gollier, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Dave and Liz had children around the same age. However, Dave felt Liz wasn't a suitable long-term partner due to her limited education and lack of shared interests. Their relationship focused more on physical intimacy than meaningful conversations. Over time, Liz grew increasingly interested in what Dave was doing when she wasn't around, particularly in regards to who he was seeing. However, Dave consistently reminded her that they were in an open relationship, implying that she shouldn't be concerned about his interactions with others. He also reassured her that she had the freedom to date other men if she chose to do so. Despite Dave's openness, Liz couldn't shake off her feelings of dissatisfaction and jealousy, particularly towards Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to understand the close bond that persisted between Dave and Amy even after their breakup. As a result, Liz's behavior became increasingly possessive, prompting Dave to create distance between them. It was during this period of separation that Carrie entered Dave's life. Carrie was not only beautiful but also stylish, intelligent, and a great conversationalist. Dave found himself lost in conversation with her for hours, feeling an undeniable connection as they shared common interests and perspectives. Liz noticed that Dave was becoming increasingly distant, so she tried to rekindle their connection by sending messages, emails, and making phone calls. However, he had no intention of stopping his interactions with Carrie or anyone else for her sake. Meanwhile, Carrie and Dave were spending more nights together, which was convenient for Carrie's work schedule and enjoyable for Dave. Carrie seemed to be taking things lightly, focusing on having fun and not looking for anything serious. In December 2015, Liz was shot and non-fatally wounded, leading her to suspect who might be responsible and realize she needed to take action. 2 years prior, on November 13, 2012, Carrie had kissed Dave goodbye before he left for work, expecting to see him later. However, that would be the last time they saw each other. At 9:45 a.m. that morning, Dave received a surprising text message from Carrie stating she wanted to move in with him permanently. Dave found this message disconcerting as they had previously discussed and agreed not to rush into a relationship, being happy with their current situation. Dave replied that he wasn't ready for such a change, but Carrie's response was unpleasant and filled with profanity. He was shocked to discover that all of Carrie's belongings were gone from the apartment. This led him to believe she had left him for good. That same day, Carrie also removed him as a friend on Facebook, which seemed like the end of the matter. However, Dave started getting multiple rude texts and emails from Carrie daily, containing curses and threats to ruin his life. Carrie sent a large number of these messages, all of which were aggressive. Uncharacteristically, she also stopped showing up for work, despite being known for her punctuality. Strange messages weren't only sent to Dave but also to her mother and 15-year-old son, Max. She claimed to have found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max with her, but wanted to be alone for the time being due to worries over her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie posted on Facebook that she'd left of her own free will and was tired of criticism. She wasn't missing her old life but wasn't ready to return home. Carrie asserted her independence as a grown woman, stating that she had the right to leave home if she chose to. She apologized for hurting everyone by leaving abruptly. However, as time passed, Carrie failed to reappear. Her mother became increasingly concerned when Carrie missed important family events, including her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other celebrations. The final indication that something was seriously wrong was when Carrie missed her father's funeral. Liz began receiving messages from Carrie, which were insulting, humiliating, and even threatening. Carrie warned Liz to stay away from Dave. Confused by Carrie's behavior, Liz reached out to Dave, who revealed he was facing a similar situation. Carrie was sending him messages and emails, accusing him of wrongdoing, calling him a liar, and vowing revenge for the pain he allegedly caused her. The messages were sometimes ominous, with Carrie claiming to know what Dave was doing at the moment. The shared experience brought Dave and Liz closer together, but also made Dave feel guiltier about the trouble he had caused. The messages from Carrie grew more menacing and were filled with grammatical errors and illogical content. This was unusual, as Carrie's mother claimed that her daughter had always been a calm person who wrote coherent and well-structured letters and documents. Carrie was known to be meticulous about spelling and writing style. It's possible that she had experienced even more severe mental health issues. Her actions seemed to be driven solely by her uncontrolled mental state. A key indicator of dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality, is the presence of separate, simultaneous self-consciousness in each ego, each with its own distinct memories, thoughts, behaviors, and inclinations toward specific actions. This might explain Carrie's unusual behavior and altered writing style. Everything suggested she was unstable, which is why the police didn't initially consider her missing, instead focusing on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They tried to track Carrie's cell phone, but it was unsuccessful due to blocked signals. Meanwhile, Liz and Dave continued to receive hundreds of texts and emails, sometimes simultaneously receiving nasty messages when they were together. Dave and Liz continued dating, but he felt uneasy around her as she became increasingly demanding. Despite claiming to be fine with their no-commitment relationship, Liz's behavior suggested otherwise. Every time Dave tried to end things with Liz, Carrie would start texting him, bonding with him over their shared victimization. This common ground drew Dave and Carrie closer together, causing them to reunite repeatedly. In January 2013, a missing car was surprisingly found in Dave's front yard. However, the fingerprints on the steering wheel didn't match Carrie's, and the car showed no suspicious signs. The police eventually returned the car to Carrie's parents. Carrie continued to message Liz and Dave, escalating her behavior by sending pictures of their children and threatening to harm them unless Dave left Liz alone. As time passed, Carrie's stalking persisted, and Liz's jealousy grew, frustrating Dave. He became exhausted with the events unfolding in his life and eventually found the strength to end his relationship with Liz. This decision came shortly after a tragic incident in August 2013, when Liz reported a fire at her home that resulted in the death of all her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz suspected Carrie was responsible, citing repeated threats made via texts and emails. The incident marked a significant turning point in the case of missing person Carrie Farver, leading to Carrie's placement on a federal wanted list. Tens of thousands of messages were meticulously analyzed. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, as they believed Dave was also in danger. Someone had vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and thrown a brick through his window. It appeared that Carrie's anger was directed at anyone in Dave's life. Consequently, Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife, began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. As Dave spent time with his children, he also saw Amy regularly. The police were perplexed as to why Carrie, who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks, was now stalking Dave and his ex-wife. The investigators decided to focus on Dave Coupa, as Carrie's disappearance raised many questions that needed to be answered. It was a mystery that didn't add up. Carrie Farver's family was also tirelessly searching for her, exploring every possible lead to find her. Their efforts finally paid off in the spring of 2015, when detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty took on the case. Unfortunately, they found no evidence that Carrie was still alive. One of the detectives shared their thoughts with ABC News. It's unusual for adults to suddenly leave without using any money. No one saw or heard from her, which doesn't make sense. She had a good income and a nice home. I've come to believe that I have no proof she's alive. With the help of a digital forensics expert, the detectives analyzed data from Kropa and Gore's phones from 2013. Kawa discovered that Carrie had sent over 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave in just 3 years. Whoever was impersonating Carrie became increasingly sophisticated, trying to hide their IP address and true identity. Somebody with expertise in computer programs seemed to be behind the strange occurrences. In December 2015, Liz Gard contacted the police again, this time reporting that she had been shot in the leg on her own doorstep. She claimed her attacker was Amy Flora, not Carrie. Coincidentally, Dave was missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. This new development raised suspicions that Amy might be involved in Carrie's disappearance. The investigation uncovered a lead that suggested Amy's motive. She may have been seeking revenge against women connected to Dave Krupp. Amy's relationship with Dave had been complicated, and the presence of other women in his life might have prevented them from reuniting. The police promptly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, she had a solid alibi. Multiple witnesses confirmed that she was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, so no arrest was made. The investigation became increasingly puzzling. New details emerged from the analysis of Liz's cell phone data. Investigators found fake email addresses using variations of Farver's name and an app used to schedule messages. This discovery shed light on how Liz and Dave received simultaneous messages from Carrie. The investigation led to suspicion of Liz Gollier, which intensified when her fingerprint matched those on Carrie's car steering wheel. It was now clear who the culprit was, and the priority was to prevent further harm. To catch Liz off guard, detectives devised a plan to create a fake narrative, pretending to still consider Amy the prime suspect, aiming to prevent Liz from escaping or destroying evidence. Liz fell for the trap. She was thrilled at the opportunity to eliminate another rival who was threatening her relationship with Dave. Soon after, Liz Gollier gave the police an email supposedly written by Amy. The email included a confession to kidnapping Carrie, along with specific details about the crime. According to the confession, Carrie had been stabbed in the stomach or chest area before her body was disposed of. The email also revealed information about Carrie's car and home that had not been publicly disclosed. According to an investigative spokeswoman, Liz provided detectives with information that only someone intimately involved in the crime could have known. In doing so, she inadvertently implicated herself in Carrie Farver's murder. The letter made it clear that the crime occurred in a car, prompting authorities to re-examine the victim's vehicle. Upon removing the seat covers and fabric, specialists discovered a blood stain belonging to Carrie Farver. Liz managed to send messages posing as Carrie without arousing suspicion, but it's unclear how. Reports suggest that Liz Gollier led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. Notably, Garrett's IP address was linked to messages sent under Carrie's name. When questioned, Garrett revealed that he had been in a long-term relationship with Liz. Out of kindness, Garrett invited Liz to move in with him and his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and deteriorated significantly once they started living together. Garrett would often take care of Liz's children while she isolated herself in her room or left the house. Garrett was shocked by what the police told him. It was discovered that Liz spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be a missing woman. Although her room was messy, no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did discover several cell phones and electronic devices in the last place she stayed. In late December 2016, Shaunana Liz was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor commented on the complexity of the investigation, stating that most murders are dark, but this crime was particularly bizarre. It would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. Liz's actions, including letting her dog die in a fire she set herself and shooting herself in the thigh, were attempts to deflect suspicion from herself. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, believed the case against her was weak since it was largely based on circumstantial evidence. Key pieces of evidence were missing, including Carrie's body and the crime weapon, and Liz had not confessed to the crime. In fact, there was no conclusive proof that Carrie was even dead. The defense team requested a mistrial, which would allow a judge to determine the extent of Shaunana's guilt. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of complex electronic evidence, as well as physical evidence. They argued that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car supported the theory that she had been stabbed. Investigators also found a direct link between Shaunana and Carrie's murder by analyzing a memory card that Shaunana had used around the time Carrie went missing. The memory card, which was found in a tablet stored at Dave's residence, contained deleted images. It was clear that the foot belonged to a people who had been deceased for several years. Notably, Carrie had a similar tattoo among her distinguishing features. Her mother later confirmed that the tattoo indeed belonged to Carrie. The photo solidified the conviction of Shaunana Liz was predator. The judge ruled her guilty of first-degree murder and handed down a life sentence without parole, stating that Carrie Farver did not disappear by choice but was tragically murdered. Authorities suspect that Shaunana murdered Carrie, allowed her body to decompose, and then burned the remains to eliminate all evidence. Motivated by jealousy, she decided to eliminate her rival. After disposing of Carrie, Shaunana took her cell phone and used it to send messages that would make Farver appear unstable and win back Dave's favor. When this plan succeeded, Shaunana wanted to eliminate Amy as well, but she became too entangled in her own scheme and ultimately fell into her own trap. Shaunana, also known as Liz, was also found guilty of arson for setting fire to her own home in August 2013 and attempting to blame it on Carrie. The fire destroyed the house and killed pets, resulting in an additional 20-year prison sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, despite maintaining her innocence. Dave revealed that he received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, he claimed that he never noticed Carrie stalking him during their relationship, which contrasts with his experience with Shaunana. So, what happened to Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps and became a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science, and is now married. Although it's unlikely he's forgotten the past, he may have found some peace with his new family. As for Dave Kropa, he now lives a private life, away from the public eye. He doesn't have a public account on any social media platform. This disturbing crime story is a harsh reminder of the complexities and manipulation that can occur in human relationships. It highlights how vulnerable we can be in our own surroundings, unaware of the true nature of those around us. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Graciela Graciela. Graciela Graciela was born on October 6, 19, in Mexico, to a working-class family who sought a better future for their children. To achieve this, her parents made the decision to immigrate to the United States, ultimately settling in Hermiston, Oregon. As Graciela was very young at the time of the move, she has no recollection of the challenges associated with relocating. Upon reaching school age, Graciela attended Umatilla High School, an institution that predominantly served students from low-income backgrounds. The school provided all students with free meals, reflecting the socioeconomic status of its student body, of which 66% were Hispanic. It was here that Graciela's sociable nature and innate charm enabled her to effortlessly form friendships among her peers. After graduating, she proceeded to enroll in the business department at Blue Mountain College. From a young age, Graciela had always dreamed of becoming a hairstylist and owning her own beauty salon. With determination and hard work, she believed she could make her dreams a reality. By February 2006, she had achieved her goal and became the owner of Cuz Beauty Salon. Graciela's talent and charisma quickly made her a well-known figure in society. As the salon's owner, she always presented herself well, which added to the salon's positive image. Her passion for her job and understanding of the latest beauty trends ensured a steady stream of clients. Over time, some of these clients became close friends, who were always welcome at her home. Graciela was highly respected in the town, not only for her professional success but also for her interesting and happy personal life. Her first love, with whom she had two daughters, Annabelle and Gabriela, also known as Gabby, was someone she met in her youth. Although the relationship didn't last long, and the father of her children left the family, Graciela didn't let this setback hold her back. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and continued to move forward as a single mother. Graciela later earned a degree in cosmetology. She then met a kind-hearted man of Mexican descent named Romero Sanchez, and they got married. Her children from a previous relationship reported that she never regretted this decision. Her husband was caring not only to her but also to her children, treating them as his own. The family later welcomed two more children, Arthur and Jacob. Although he had biological sons, Graciela's husband still affectionately referred to Annabelle and Gabriela as his girls. Gabby considered her stepfather to be her real father, as he consistently supported, protected, and cared for them. The couple prioritized keeping their family united and happy, raising 4 children together. This did not deter Graciela from pursuing her passion. Instead, she would often take her children with her to professional meetings. The family developed a lovely tradition of traveling together, exploring new cities, local attractions, and cultural features. They also prioritized staying connected to their roots, frequently visiting Mexico and enjoying quality time together. Everyone made a genuine effort to make each other happy. However, after 17 years of marriage, the couple decided to separate. Graciela and her ex-husband chose not to burden each other with their dwindling feelings, opting to preserve the respectful relationship they had built over the years. Even after the divorce, they maintained a warm and strong connection. The father remained involved in the children's lives, regularly seeing them and sharing custody of their youngest son with Graciela. The other children were grown and lived on their own, but they remained close to their parents. They would get together to celebrate holidays and often sought each other's advice. Graciela handled her divorce well, remaining optimistic and confident, thanks in part to her ex-husband's kind and understanding behavior during this challenging time. On November 9, 2019, Romero made an unexpected visit to Annabelle, Graciela's eldest daughter. Annabelle was surprised to see her mother's new husband show up unexpectedly. Romero told Annabelle that Graciela had disappeared. According to Romero, He and Graciela had met with Jacob the previous night. Afterward, Romero returned home and went to bed beside Graciela, who was already asleep. However, when he woke up in the morning, Graciela was gone. He searched the house but couldn't find her. Romero tried to contact Graciela by calling and texting her, but she didn't respond. He went to Annabelle's place hoping she might have some information about Graciela's disappearance. Annabelle, however, had no idea where her mother was. She was shocked not only by the news of her mother's disappearance but also by Romero's reaction. He was in tears and seemed genuinely upset. Annabelle found this odd because Romero had never shown any strong emotions around them before, only indifference. Romero mentioned that Graciela had been acting strangely and might have found someone else. He admitted she might have needed a break from their relationship and wasn't sure if she was truly happy with him. However, Annabelle found his words insincere and his tears overly dramatic. She started to worry about her mother and found Romero's behavior suspicious. Romero had previously avoided talking to Graciela's children, but suddenly reached out to them. After he left, Annabelle told the rest of the family what happened. They gathered at Graciela's house to figure out what was going on. Her car was still parked in the driveway, which was unusual since she would have likely taken it if she were leaving Romero. The house was also spotlessly tidy, which was out of character for Graciela, who preferred a more creative and chaotic space. If she were planning to leave, her belongings would have been scattered around the room. Graciela spent a considerable amount of time in front of the mirror, carefully selecting an outfit for the day. However, she surprisingly left all her treasured jewelry at home, including her favorite rings and necklaces that she wore daily. This unusual behavior raised concerns among her family members, who couldn't help but imagine worst-case scenarios, including the possibility of her fleeing. While searching the house, Gabby stumbled upon something peculiar, a large, heavy blanket in the washing machine. This was unusual because their mother, Graciela, always emphasized the importance of not overloading appliances. It was likely that Romero, who normally didn't participate in household chores, had washed the blanket. This sparked suspicion that he might be trying to conceal something. It was later discovered that along with Graciela, several important items had gone missing from the house, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone. On November 11th, Annabelle went to the police station to report her mother, Graciela, missing. However, she was surprised to find that Romero, Graciela's husband, had not informed the police about her disappearance, despite knowing about it since November 9th or possibly earlier. As a result, Annabelle became the first person to file a missing person report for her mother. Romero's distant personality had been a concern for Graciela's family since they met him. Graciela had met Romero at her beauty salon, where he was a client, after her divorce. Their initial friendship eventually developed into a romantic relationship. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they noticed his aloof and cold demeanor. Annabelle and her sister, Gabby, tried several times to connect with Romero, but he did not reciprocate, leaving Graciela's children puzzled by his behavior. They initially attributed it to individual personality differences, especially compared to their mother's previous relationships. They were eager to understand their mother's partner and what motivated him. At times, he seemed strange and aloof to them, and they struggled to comprehend how someone as lively and joyful as their mother could be drawn to someone so serious and reserved. Despite their reservations, they respected her decision. When their mother shared the news of her upcoming wedding, everyone rallied around her, particularly the girls, who wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests couldn't help but notice Romero's haughty demeanor and restraint. Some even perceived him as excessively possessive, as he dominated the bride's attention. When Graciela's young children came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero responded with disdain rather than warmth and affection, making it clear that he didn't want to share his wife's attention with anyone, not even her own family. After that, Graciella's relatives struggled to hide their genuine opinions about Romero. Annabelle even went so far as to say she didn't consider him a stepfather, let alone a father figure. The family simply wanted to have a normal relationship, like those found in any civilized household. Following the wedding, Graciella and Romero moved in together, along with her youngest son Jacob, into Graciella's home. Jacob shared that shortly after the wedding, Romero started behaving as if he was the sole owner of the house. The boy recalled that the initial honeymoon phase was brief, and soon the family started to fall apart. He observed that his mother initially tried to establish personal boundaries, but being non-confrontational, she quickly gave in to Romero's demands. This seemed to suit Romero, who had a quick temper and never apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the household, Graciella often conceded to Romero's wishes. As time went on, it seemed she realized she had rushed into the marriage without fully thinking it through. In private conversations, Graciella confessed to feeling trapped and suffocated in the relationship. Her husband exerted control over her, never allowing her to go anywhere alone. Despite this, she never expressed any desire to leave the abusive relationship, suggesting she was still in love with Romero. Everyone realized that Graciella was in a relationship with the wrong person. It became apparent that her partner, Romero, was jobless and financially dependent on her. The Graciella family, who valued hard work, found it frustrating that Romero was always by Graciella's side without any apparent reason. Romero was a master manipulator who kept a close eye on Graciella, monitoring her interactions, including her friendships with other women. He would either prevent her from going out or show up unexpectedly, as if checking on her loyalty. His extreme jealousy was suffocating. Graciella felt embarrassed by his behavior, which led her to isolate herself socially, only interacting with her family. This had a negative impact on her professional life, as her job required frequent client meetings and attending industry events. Those close to Graciella noticed a significant change in her demeanor. She looked sad, worn out, and had lost her usual cheerfulness. It was clear that she was unhappy. Even her children observed the changes in her mood and appearance, as well as her loss of independence. They discussed their concerns among themselves and concluded that, although they didn't like Romero, he was Graciella's choice, and they had to respect her decisions. Other relatives shared the family's distrust of Romero. However, no one knew how to intervene or offer support. The couple's issues were serious enough to require professional help. Gabby had once suggested this to her mother, but Graciella insisted on handling her personal life independently. In 2018, Graciella suddenly announced that she would relocate her beauty salon to her home, citing convenience. Her family was skeptical, as she had never mentioned this plan before, despite running the salon for 12 years. Some clients noted that Romero often hung around the salon, creating tension and disrupting the usually warm atmosphere. While some thought Graciella made the move to solve a problem, others suspected that her jealous husband was behind the decision. Despite the initial doubts, Graciella remained enthusiastic about the change, saying it allowed her to spend more time with Jacob and Romero. By the end of 2018, she and her husband were remodeling a room for the salon, but the project took longer than expected and wasn't completed until May 2019. Although the salon was closed temporarily, Graciella's reputation remained intact, and rumors of the studio's reopening attracted a long queue of clients, including new ones, months in advance. Graciella was thrilled with her professional success but became increasingly private about her personal life. Return to the moment before of Graciella's disappearance. Another incident raised concerns about Graciella's safety. She asked her daughter Gabby to pick her up, which was unusual. But she claimed everything was fine and said she was just having a disagreement with her husband. When they met up, they spent time together and Graciella seemed to relax. She smiled and told Gabby not to worry, saying that couples' arguments are normal and can actually bring people closer together. Despite this, Gabby couldn't shake off her worries and remained uneasy about her mother's situation. After Annabelle contacted the police, the relationship between Graciella's family and Romero rapidly deteriorated. He offered an explanation for his wife's disappearance, suggesting that she might have wanted some time alone or could have left with another man, and he believed she would soon return. This was his standard response to anyone inquiring about the situation. However, the police took the report seriously and initiated an investigation, considering the possibility that Graciella could have been a victim of a crime. They began by searching her home, where they found that only a few personal items were missing, with nothing else seeming out of the ordinary. The police also interviewed Graciella's children, her husband, and others close to the family, including her ex-husband. Although everyone expressed skepticism about Romero's behavior, the investigation did not uncover any significant information. Romero cooperated with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, participating in interrogations, providing his DNA, and undergoing a polygraph test. Despite his cooperation, the police did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him, so the investigation continued. Analysis of Graciella's phone records revealed her last known location was near a bridge in Washington on November 9 at 12:30 p.m., when the signal stopped after her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media remained inactive. Despite questioning hundreds of witnesses and checking all her frequent locations, investigators found no signs of her. The investigation deemed her disappearance suspicious due to the complete lack of evidence. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston police publicly stated that they had no confirmed information about Graciella's last sighting. Although Romero didn't report Graciella missing, the authorities didn't accuse him of anything. The police's stance frustrated Graciella's relatives, causing them to reduce communication with law enforcement. The family eventually stopped receiving weekly updates, forcing Graciella's children to contact the police station directly for information. As of March 2020, there were no new developments in Graciella's case. In an effort to revive the investigation, Graciella's family reached out to the media, hoping to raise public awareness and gather information. They believed even small details could be crucial. Gabby, a family member, expressed the family's frustration and disappointment with the police's lack of progress in the case. The Graciella family urged investigators to focus on finding Graciella, as they suspected foul play due to the state of her belongings and the unusual circumstances at home. It was unclear who would harm her, as she had no known enemies. Her family knew she wouldn't leave without contacting them, and the lack of communication suggested something was seriously wrong. The family also requested a new detective team, citing concerns of bias and collusion with Romero, whom they believed was somehow connected to the case. The family pointed out numerous inconsistencies in the investigation. It was found that Romero's phone had been turned off on the day his wife went missing, and his actions didn't seem like those of someone who was worried about a loved one disappearing suddenly. The Graciella family asked for Romero to be arrested. Police Chief Jason Edmiston quickly responded to these claims. He agreed that Mrs. Graciella's disappearance seemed suspicious and might involve something criminal. He said this was just one idea, but promised that the investigation would stay fair and be based on evidence and facts. Edmiston also denied that Romero had any connections to the police that might affect the case. Edmiston mentioned that false information was spreading and making the investigation harder. He said the case was ongoing and that some information had to be kept secret. The police also asked the FBI for help. Edmiston expressed frustration that people were criticizing the police without understanding how complicated the law is. At the same time, Gabby started a fundraiser to hire a private investigator. This move was seen as criticism of how the police were handling the case, suggesting they weren't doing their job well. 1 year after Graciella's disappearance, her family and friends held a memorial event to honor her memory and pray for her safe return. They lit candles and posted signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue searching for her. In September 2023, a significant development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez, Graciela's husband, was severely injured in an attack. There was speculation that Mason Graciela, Graciela's brother, was involved in the incident, but details and any potential consequences for Mason were not disclosed. It appeared that Graciela's family had become frustrated with the police's lack of progress in investigating Romero, leading to a potentially frightening outcome. Graciela's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in unbearable uncertainty that's taking a devastating toll on their health. Her children are left with only prayers, hoping for clarity and justice, unsure if she's alive. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Londano. Jennifer Londano, a 31-year-old engaged and responsible individual, failed to arrive at her job in Englewood, New Jersey, prompting concerns from her family and friends. As the manager of the newly opened Luna Lounge on Armory Street, Jennifer was a diligent worker with a spotless attendance record. However, on June 25, 2017, she vanished without a trace after closing the bar in the early morning hours. When she didn't show up for her shift that evening, her co-workers grew worried and attempted to contact her. But her phone was switched off, which was unusual because she always maintained regular communication with them. This lack of response heightening their anxiety, her loved ones decided to file a missing person report with the police, highlighting that she always checked in with them before going anywhere. As the investigation began, police visited Jennifer's apartment, where she lived alone. The officers found the front door locked with no signs of forced entry or damage. Upon entering the apartment, they initially noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The space was clean and well-maintained, with no signs of disarray or theft. At first glance, nothing suggested that the apartment was a crime scene. After investigating Jennifer's apartment and finding no leads, the police visited the bar where she worked as a manager to gather more information. They spoke with the staff at the establishment and discovered that Jennifer was well-liked by everyone, with no reported conflicts with patrons or employees. Her co-workers described her as kind, helpful, and highly respected. Jennifer was a driven and ambitious person who had a strong work ethic. In 2016, she partnered with 40-year-old Rafael Lolos to open the Luna Lounge in Englewood, New Jersey. The bar was successful, thanks in part to Jennifer's exceptional people skills and management abilities. Lolos provided the financial backing, while Jennifer was the face of the business, charming customers with her warm personality. What the police discovered during their conversation with the bar staff was that Jennifer and Rafael's relationship went beyond business. They were romantically involved, and their relationship was public knowledge. Despite their close relationship, they had not yet taken the step of living together. The investigation revealed that on the morning Jennifer was last seen, she had closed the bar and gotten into Rafael's car, which was waiting for her after work. As the last person to see her, Rafael became a key person of interest, and the detectives decided to bring him in for questioning. Rafael claimed that he drove Jennifer home from work after she closed the bar, and they spent some time together at her apartment before he left to let her rest for her shift that evening. Following her disappearance, Rafael maintained contact with Jennifer's family and collaborated with them to try to determine her whereabouts. Since there was no apparent connection between Rafael and Jennifer's disappearance, the police concentrated on investigating other leads. However, they faced challenges due to Jennifer's phone being turned off on the day she disappeared, with the last signal coming from a cell tower near her home. Neighborhood interviews yielded no suspicious information. As part of the investigation, the police requested banking records, as they often provide crucial clues in such cases. When the bank shared the data, it revealed an unexpected development. Jennifer's bank card had been used even after she went missing. The investigation led detectives to suspect that Jennifer was intentionally hiding, but her family strongly disagreed, convinced that she would never willingly cause them distress. To gather more information, the police began to investigate the activity on her card, seeking to determine when, where, and how it was used. 2 days after Jennifer's disappearance, on June 27th, a pedestrian walking along Pier 44 in Brooklyn noticed something unusual in the water. The person stared at the object for a while, unable to identify it, before realizing with shock that it was a human body, or at least part of one. The police were summoned to the scene, and the pier was sealed off. A thorough search by divers yielded no additional body parts or evidence. The police faced a daunting challenge in identifying the victim, but a potential lead emerged. A tattoo was discovered on the victim's right thigh during a forensic examination. The tattoo, which may have belonged to the victim, was partially translated from Sanskrit, an ancient Indian language with complex grammar. The police released an image of the tattoo, hoping someone would recognize it and provide information. Investigations revealed that the tattoo's inscription was Sanskrit, but incorrectly written. The tattoo artist and the victim seemed to intend to write Liliana, but did so with grammatical errors, suggesting neither of them was familiar with the language. For days after the initial gruesome discovery, police received another disturbing call from a passerby who spotted a leg on the riverbank near 79th Street. Police immediately cordoned off the area and pulled the leg out of the water. The leg, which was intact from the knee down, seemed to match the remains found earlier, leading investigators to believe they belonged to the same person. A notable detail was the pink-painted fingernails on the leg. Despite an extensive search by divers in the area, no other remains or evidence were found. However, forensic analysis soon confirmed that the fragments found were indeed from the same body. Around this time, the police had already identified the victim. A few days after releasing an image of the distinctive tattoo, a woman contacted the police station and revealed that she knew the tattoo's owner. It was Jennifer's mother, Gladys Quintero, who recognized the tattoo on the news and recognized it as belonging to her daughter. The tattoo, it turned out, was a tribute to Jennifer's late aunt and symbolized the name Lily or Liliana. Jennifer's mother to New York to identify human remains. When it was confirmed that the remains were Jennifer's, the family was left shattered. The discovery marked a significant turn in the case, transforming a missing person investigation into a homicide probe. The family was not only grief-stricken by Jennifer's death, but also horrified by the brutal circumstances surrounding it. Unfortunately, due to the state of the remains, it was impossible to determine the exact cause of death. Despite an extensive search, the police were unable to recover additional body parts. As family and friends paid their respects to Jennifer at her workplace, the bar, detectives were making progress in their investigation. They tracked down leads on Jennifer's credit card usage. Through a thorough review of security footage and store visits, detectives identified the person who had used Jennifer's credit card, Raphael, Jennifer's boyfriend. They discovered that Raphael had left Jennifer's apartment on the day she disappeared to go shopping. His purchases, made with Jennifer's credit card, included a box of garbage bags and 2 meat cleavers from different stores. Later that evening, he crossed the George Washington Bridge into Manhattan, and his cell phone records placed him near the Hudson River. Raphael went home after leaving Jennifer's apartment and never returned. 2 days later, Jennifer's torso was discovered. The police suspected that Raphael might have killed her and dismembered her body using meat cleavers, a disturbing thought considering their romantic relationship. However, the evidence pointing to Raphael's guilt was mounting. As a result, the police obtained an arrest warrant and a search warrant for his home, anticipating that they would soon apprehend him. Raphael attempted to evade capture by renting a hotel room and paying in cash, but he was quickly tracked down and arrested. He did not resist arrest and denied any involvement in Jennifer's death, claiming that Jennifer had given him her credit card. Raphael continued to insist that Jennifer was fine when he left her, but detectives uncovered more evidence that contradicted his testimony. A search of his home revealed dark red stains in the bathroom, which were later confirmed by a lab test to be Jennifer's dried blood. Detectives investigating Jennifer's disappearance analyzed her communications with Raphael and found a pattern of frequent arguments, typically sparked by jealousy. A search of Raphael's home uncovered a box sent via post office and a bag that had previously contained a GPS tracking device. It became clear that Raphael had secretly installed the device on Jennifer's car, allowing him to monitor her movements. Cell phone data revealed that Raphael had picked Jennifer up from work and taken her to her apartment. Although Jennifer's phone was soon turned off, Raphael's phone remained active. Between 9 p.m. and midnight on the day of her disappearance, his phone sent a signal to a cell tower near the Hudson River. This suggests that Jennifer may have already been dead by then, and Raphael may have driven to the river to dispose of her body. Raphael and Jennifer's relationship was complex and tumultuous, with conflicts often centered on financial issues. Despite their efforts to establish a business together, opening a bar less than a year before her disappearance, their relationship was marked by animosity and blurred boundaries. Raphael's messages to Jennifer were volatile, veering between insults, threats, apologies, and declarations of love, with one notable instance where he referred to her as a gold digger. Jennifer's family was shocked and disbelieving when the man who had claimed to love her and helped search for her became the prime suspect in her murder. Raphael refused to explain himself, denied any wrongdoing, and hired a lawyer. Although police couldn't find the exact knives they knew Raphael had bought, they were able to purchase identical ones from the same store. Forensic analysis later confirmed that these knives were used to harm Jennifer's body. Raphael was subsequently charged with several crimes, including murder, desecration of remains, stalking, hindering apprehension, and credit card fraud. The trial, which began in November 2019, lasted for 2 months. Prosecutors claimed that Jennifer was killed by Raphael in her apartment during a jealous argument. Raphael's lawyers argued that the state had no concrete evidence to prove their claim, pointing out that there were no signs of a struggle in the apartment and no marks in the bathtub where Jennifer was allegedly dismembered. The prosecution countered that the lack of evidence was, in itself, evidence of a cover-up. The absence of any signs of a crime suggested that Raphael had made a deliberate effort to conceal his tracks. The bathtub, in particular, was found to be remarkably clean, with no DNA or physical evidence linking Jennifer to the scene. The prosecutor pointed out that an ordinary person's bathtub would not be as clean as the one in question. During the trial, Jennifer's mother emotionally addressed the judge, stating that the defendant had destroyed her life and her family. She emphasized that Jennifer was her beloved daughter, and the defendant's actions had left her devastated. After reviewing the case, the judge determined that Raphael was consumed by an obsession with Jennifer. When given the opportunity to speak, Raphael refused, only communicating with his lawyer. In December 2019, the jury deliberated for 3 days before finding Raphael guilty on all charges. The verdict was officially announced in February 2020. As a result, 43-year-old Raphael received the maximum sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 63 years. This means he will be 106 years old before he can be considered for parole. Unfortunately, the remainder of Jennifer's body was never found. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Catherine Wells Burr. Catherine Wells Burr was born in 1989 in the United Kingdom to parents Phil and Jane Wells Burr. She has an older sister named Lynn. In the summer of 2010, Catherine met Rafael Novak, a 31-year-old co-worker, on a university break while working on a new vacuum cleaner production line. Rafał was an immigrant from Poland with a previous marriage and a son, had moved to England 4 years earlier seeking a better life. Rafał and Catherine started dating, initially meeting for lunch at the production site cafe, but soon progressing to romantic dinners. Rafał showered Catherine with gifts, took Catherine to movies, and went on walks with Catherine. As their relationship deepened, Rafał shared his past and reasons for moving to the UK with Catherine. Rafał's trustworthy nature allows her to open up completely to him. Within a few months, Catherine introduced Rafał to her parents, who welcomed him into their family and hoped for Rafał and Catherine's future happiness. Soon, Rafał and Catherine began planning their wedding. Catherine graduated with honors from Bath Spa University in 2011 and secured a promising job as a business analyst at Pneumatic International, the manufacturer of Henry vacuum cleaners. Her career progressed quickly, helping her have good job opportunities. Catherine is smart, highly educated, and has good interaction skills with others. She shows genuine interest in her co-workers' problems and cares for those around her. Her kind demeanor and radiant smile have earned her the admiration of her colleagues, who view her as a young leader. Catherine's career was advancing swiftly, and her substantial earnings, combined with those of her partner Rafał, allowed them to purchase a spacious home with a terrace in Willow Way. Although they were financially secure, they opted to take out a mortgage, securing insurance coverage as per their agreement with the bank. With their youth, successful careers, and love for each other, it seemed they had all the ingredients for happiness. However, the fateful day of September 12, 2012, marked a turning point in their lives, changing everything forever. On September 12, 2012, Orlando, a local resident, was driving home after a night shift at the gas station. He is in a hurry to take his daughter Maria to kindergarten as he promised his wife. While driving, he noticed black smoke coming from a nearby parking lot after turning a sharp corner. Smoke billowed from a car engulfed in flames. Orlando stopped and tried to get a closer look but couldn't due to the intense fire. When firefighters arrived 4 minutes later, the car was completely burned out. The police cordoned off the area to keep onlookers away. The location was relatively deserted due to the early hour, and there were no witnesses to the incident. Upon investigation, a charred body was found. The police needed to identify the victim and determine the cause of death. There were no signs of a car accident or any evidence of another vehicle being involved. The police initially suspected that the car may have caught fire due to a malfunction or self-ignition. A thorough investigation was conducted, involving multiple expert analyses. The remains were sent to a forensic laboratory to determine the identity and cause of death. The police also examined fragments of the burned vehicle to identify any malfunctions and establish the cause of the fire. The police began by checking the missing persons database and recent reports of disappearances. They quickly identified the deceased as 23-year-old Catherine Wells Barr. On the same day, Rafał Nowak filed a missing persons report for his girlfriend, Catherine. According to Rafał, he left for work at 5:30 a.m. while Catherine was still asleep. When she failed to show up for work, and Rafał couldn't find her at any of her relatives' homes, he contacted the police. The investigation involved interviewing the victim's family, including her parents and sister, as well as Rafał, her colleagues, and friends. By gathering information about the last days and years of Catherine's life, the police were able to reconstruct the events leading up to her tragic death. The investigation into Catherine's disappearance continued to uncover shocking details about her life with Rafał. As the truth began to emerge, it became clear that their relationship had been built on lies from the start. Rafał, a 29-year-old man from Poland, had left his wife and child behind to escape his debts. He moved to the UK, where he met Anna Levick, with whom he had a long-term relationship starting in 2008. When Rafał met Catherine, he initially maintained relationships with both women. However, he eventually chose Catherine, believing she offered more stability and financial security. Catherine, unaware of Raffel's true intentions, genuinely desired a happy marriage and family with him. Meanwhile, Raffel was secretly planning to kill Catherine, intending to use the life insurance payout and the large house they shared to fund a new life with his mistress, Anna. The murder was carefully planned and executed with exceptional cruelty. On the day Catherine went missing, Raffel waited a few hours before reporting her disappearance to her boss, pretending to be frantically worried about her whereabouts. He feigned panic and despair in front of Catherine's colleagues and relatives, claiming she had been receiving threatening letters from a mentally unstable admirer. When Catherine's car was found missing and she was not at her parents' home or her own, Raffel's fake concern led Catherine's family to contact the police. Raffel recounted that the evening before her disappearance had been a normal evening. Raffel and Catherine went for a walk, bought groceries, had dinner, watched TV, and went to bed together. Catherine seemed calm. However, a thorough investigation revealed that her death occurred earlier. She was strangled around 2 a.m., likely in her own bed while asleep. Her body was placed in the car, driven a short distance, and set on fire to destroy evidence. Raffel Novak had a solid alibi, as he was at work from 5:30 a.m. He claimed Catherine was asleep in bed when he left. The burning car was discovered between 6 and 7 a.m. However, Raffel was still at home at 1:30 a.m., which significantly altered the case's direction. As a result, Raffel Novak became the prime suspect in Catherine Wells Burr's murder. The evidence allowed for Raffel to be detained pending further investigation. Raffel claimed that Catherine was being stalked, which had caused her significant distress. However, during the investigation, it was discovered that Catherine had a secret online life. She had accounts on several adult websites, where she shared intimate photos and engaged in flirtatious conversations with men. A letter from a secret admirer was also found. Despite attempts to mislead the investigation, evidence was uncovered that proved Raffel's direct involvement in Catherine's demise. Notably, Raffel had a motive to kill Catherine. Investigators found that he had been in continuous communication with Anna Legwinowicz, and they had met regularly over the past few months. Furthermore, it was discovered that Raffel had a financial motive. Shortly before Catherine's death, they had both taken out life insurance policies worth £123,000. Raffel and Catherine were the sole beneficiaries of each other's policies, meaning they would receive the payouts in the event of the other's death. The main motive behind Catherine's death and the burning of her car to mislead the investigation was found to be a large life insurance payout. On the day she went missing, Catherine sent a message to Anna's phone. Additionally, security cameras showed Anna and her uncle filling a gas can at a gas station a few days before the crime. This new information brought a third person into the investigation. Anna Legwinowicz, 32, and her uncle, Tadeusz Dimitricin, 38, along with Raffel Novak, are suspected of being accomplices in a premeditated crime and arson to cover up evidence. The crime was carefully planned by them over several months. They created accounts on adult websites, uploaded doctored images of Catherine, and created chats with various men to mislead the investigation. When faced with undeniable evidence, Raffel and Anna couldn't deny their involvement any longer and began blaming each other. Raffel claimed that Anna, driven by jealousy, planned and carried out the crime to eliminate Catherine. In contrast, Anna accused Raffel of committing the crime out of greed, seeking to secure the insurance payout for the house. To avoid detection, the conspirators forged much evidence related to Catherine. They created fake profiles about Catherine on dating websites, portraying her as a promiscuous and highly sexual woman. Also, to cover their tracks, the conspirators burned Catherine's body and created a fake story about her. They invented a fictitious lover, and they believed that he might be responsible for Catherine's death. One of the conspirators even sent a text message from Catherine's phone to this fictitious person, suggesting that she was on her way to meet him. However, forensic experts discovered that when the fire broke out, Catherine was only wearing her favorite nightgown, not an appropriate outfit to meet someone. Despite the evidence, Raffel refused to acknowledge his involvement in Catherine's death. Instead, he told Jane, Catherine's mother, that her daughter was receiving threatening emails and text messages from an ex-boyfriend who said if he couldn't have her, no one could. Raffel also claimed that Catherine had spoken of taking her own life. In a shocking display of deceit, Raffel allowed Catherine's parents to comfort him, believing he was also mourning the loss of Catherine he loved. Raffel's acting was incredibly convincing. After Catherine's death, her mother, Jane, was so taken in by his performance that she hugged him and allowed him to call her Mom. Jane explained that in the early stages of the investigation, the police viewed Raffel more as a witness than a suspect, so she decided to offer him her full support. Her reasoning was that if Catherine had loved him that much and he was considered part of their family, then he deserved their support. The trial, chaired by Justice Sharp, began and the jury heard that Raffel and his two co-defendants stood to gain a significant amount from Catherine's death. They hoped to receive a life insurance payout of £123,000 and half ownership of a two-bedroom home in Mangold, Somerset, valued at £137,000. During the trial, it was revealed that when police found Catherine's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12, Raffel showed no emotion. Anna Legwinowicz frequently shook her head and laughed in court when it was suggested she was responsible for the crime, but refused to testify. Tadevs also chose not to testify in his defense. The judge, Justice Sharp, told the defendants the murder was a horrific and merciless crime. The defendants showed no emotion during sentencing. The judge described Anna Legwinowicz's behavior as deceitful, manipulative, and cruel, and stated she played a significant role in the crime. He also told Tadevs that the murder was committed for gain, with many aggravating circumstances and no mitigating ones. The judge expressed deep sympathy for Catherine's parents, who had no idea that Raffel Novak's charming facade hid a monster. Raffel's actions were driven by financial gain, as he had no emotional ties to Catherine. Catherine's mother stated that the brutal and calculated manner of her daughter's death would haunt them forever. She regretted not having the chance to say goodbye or express her love, and now considers Raffel an evil person who deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. Catherine's father, Philip, added that they had welcomed Raffel into their home, treating him like a son, only to be betrayed by him. During the trial, Raffel Novak became emotional in the witness box. He denied any involvement in the death of his girlfriend, Catherine Wells Burr. Raffel claimed everyone was blaming him for a crime he did not commit. However, the court heard that Raffel showed no emotion when the police discovered Catherine's body in her burned-out car on September 12 last year. Catherine's mother, Jane Wells Burr, testified that after his initial release from police custody, Raffel asked for a steak dinner and didn't even mention Catherine. Jane Wells Burr stated that her daughter's fate was sealed when she and Raffel bought a house together and took out a life insurance policy. She believes that in signing the contract, Catherine also signed her own death warrant. Ultimately, the court found Raffel Novak guilty of suffocating Catherine with a pillow while she slept. He had conspired with his secret lover, Anna Legwinowicz, and her uncle, Tadevs, to claim a £123,000 life insurance payout and a share of the house. Anna and Tadevs had transported Catherine's body in her car to a remote location and set it on fire. Raffel and Anna were sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 32 years, while Tadevs received a 27-year sentence. After the verdict, Catherine's parents, Philip and Jane Wells Burr, advocated for stricter immigration laws. They believed that if the UK had more stringent immigration rules, like the US, Raffel Novak would not have been allowed entry. Raffel had previously been convicted of assaulting his wife in Poland. Philip and Jane, who divorced after Catherine's death, blamed the European Union for the UK's lenient immigration policies. Jane stated that the UK does not thoroughly check people entering the country. She was unaware of Rafal's previous assault charge in Poland and believes the government needs to prevent individuals like Rafal from freely entering the country. Following the verdict, Catherine's mother paid tribute to her daughter, describing her as a beautiful, determined, and hard-working individual who earned a first-class degree from the University of Bath Spa. Catherine's family expressed their devastation and loss, stating they were proud of her accomplishments and had no idea how to move forward without her. They believed she had great potential and a promising life ahead, but it was cruelly taken away from her and her loved ones. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Lin family. Min Lin and Yun Lin's romance began in the late 1980s when they met at an Australian university. They both came from China and had moved to Australia to further their studies. Min had completed her bachelor's degree and was doing an internship, while Yun participated in a student exchange program. They met each other after meeting accidentally in the university hallway. After graduating, they got married and settled in North Epping, Sydney, where their love continued to grow into a strong, close-knit family. Min and Yun had their first child, Brenda Lin, in August 1994. She was mostly known as Brenda. Their son, Henry, was born in 1997, and their youngest child, Terry, was born in 2000. At the start of the 2000s, Min and Yun decided to start a business, opening a small newsroom. Through their hard work, it became a successful news agency with a publishing arm on Rose Street. The Lin family's business success had brought them economic security. A spacious house, a luxury car, and good education for their children. Min had handled business affairs, while Yun had focused on taking care of their home and children. Neighbors had respected the Lin family for their hard work and kindness. As parents, Min and Yun had been appreciated for their care and love for their children. They had never quarreled. Their children had been very obedient and close-knit. Brenda, the eldest daughter, had stood out for her beauty, good academic performance, and kindness towards animals. Henry and Terry, two sons, had been both active and loved sports, especially soccer. As the Lin family had settled into life in Australia and their assets had increased, they had begun bringing relatives from China to live with them. In the early 2000s, Min's parents had been the first to move to North Epping and had helped with childcare. A few years later, Yun's parents also moved to Sydney suburb, with Min and Yun buying them a small house. Yun's sister, Irene, came to live with the Lin family, assisting with household chores and the children. By this time, the Lin family business was generating substantial income, reportedly nearing $1 million annually. In late 2007, Min Lin's younger sister, Kathy, and her husband, Robert, moved to Australia in search of better opportunities. They had visited before and briefly lived in Melbourne but had returned to China. This time, they were determined to settle in Australia for good. Robert was a former successful ear, nose, and throat doctor in China, decided to try his hand at entrepreneurship. He and his wife invested all their savings in a restaurant in Sydney, but the business struggled and eventually closed. Robert's subsequent attempts to open a cafe or snack bar also failed due to his lack of business skills and financial management experience. Lin's family had a habit of meeting every Friday night. Their last family gathering took place on July 17, 2009, at Kathy and Min's parents' home. The next morning, July 18, the Lin family's store had not been open, making longtime customers feel surprised and confused. This sudden closure had raised their concerns. One of them tried to contact Min multiple times but was unsuccessful, so they called Min's sister Kathy to see if she knew what was going on. Kathy was surprised and worried because her brother never closed the shop without making arrangements first. Kathy tried to call Min and Yun, but they didn't answer. She also tried calling their home phone, but no one picked up. Kathy and her husband Robert were worried, so they decided to visit Min's house to make sure everything was okay. They arrived around 9 a.m. and saw the family car. They went to the house. The front door was unlocked, but there was no sign of Min or his family inside. Kathy went upstairs. When she opened the bedroom door, she was shocked by what she saw. The room was covered in blood, including the floor, walls, ceiling, furniture, and curtains. Yum Lin's body was on the floor near the bed, and she had been severely mutilated. Kathy screamed and stumbled backward, was shocked by the gruesome scene. In the room next to where Irene slept, a terrible scene took place. Irene lay motionless on the bed, her face beaten and bruised. The bedrooms of Henry, 12, and Terry, 9, also revealed horrifying scenes. Both were brutally beaten to death. Their bodies were found in separate corners of the room. Min Lin's body was found in his bedroom, covered with a blanket soaked in blood. He was killed in the same way as his family. It seems he was the first victim, followed by his wife, her sister, and then the two boys. Kathy immediately contacted emergency services. After Kathy's urgent call, Robert left to fetch the Lin's parents, who lived about 10 kilometers from the crime scene. Police and paramedics arrived quickly, encountering what they described as one of the most horrific crime scenes they had witnessed. Tragically, the Lin family members were all killed. Each person died from multiple blows to the head with a heavy blunt object similar to a hammer. However, the crime weapon was not found at the scene. The initial examination of the crime scene did not reveal any important clues. The killer did not leave the murder weapon behind, and they did not take any valuables or money. This suggests that the main goal was to kill the Lin family, not to steal from them. At first, investigators thought there might be multiple attackers because it seemed unlikely that one person could overpower so many people. However, evidence showed that the children were awake during the attack and tried to escape. There were blood stains and splatters throughout the house. Oddly, all adult victims had head injuries and showed signs of strangulation. Investigators found identical bloody shoe prints in each room with a tread pattern. Although they could not identify the shoe brand, they determined the shoe size. No fingerprints were found, suggesting the killers wore gloves. Initially, the police had no leads or theories about the perpetrator's identity. Friends and neighbors of the Lin family all said that the family had no known enemies, making the motive for the brutal massacre unclear. The attack occurred between midnight and 3 a.m. on July 18th. Brenda Lin, the eldest child and now sole survivor of the Lin family, was attending school in New Caledonia at the time of the tragedy. She learned about the incident through social media and initially did not believe it was related to her family, but the truth devastated her. Brenda soon received the call from her Aunt Kathy, who tearfully confirmed the devastating news. Brenda was immediately flown back to Sydney, where Kathy and Robert met her at the airport. She then moved in with them, as her family's home was closed off as a crime scene. The following day, Brenda was taken to the police station, overcome with grief, to be questioned. However, she had no new information to share, stressing that her family had no enemies and hadn't noticed anything unusual before her trip. After her family's passing, Brenda inherited a significant fortune, including property and the family business. Since she was still a minor and in school, her guardians, Kathy and Robert, took on the responsibility of managing the estate. Brenda's grandparents offered their support, but Kathy and Robert insisted on being her caregivers. Robert even threatened to take legal action if the grandparents sought custody, claiming they were too old to care for a teenager. The matter was eventually resolved, with Brenda remaining in the care of her aunt and uncle. The Lin's shop and publishing business reopened under new management after a temporary closure. However, Brenda had not yet taken over the business operations. Robert began reviewing the family's financial records, including bank accounts, savings, and real estate. Beside that, experts thoroughly investigated the crime scene, documenting every detail, but no concrete leads were found. They believed the killer acted alone and entered the house quietly, possibly through and with a key. The killer wore size 9.5 shoes with a distinctive tread pattern and likely used a hammer as the lethal weapon, which was never found. The killer wore gloves, leaving no fingerprints or foreign DNA behind. One notable detail was the presence of blood stains on the doorknobs of each bedroom where the killings occurred, indicating the killer's bloodied gloves had touched them. However, there were no blood stains on Brenda's room doorknob, suggesting the killer knew she was not present. The Lynn family tragedy received extensive media coverage. However, with no concrete evidence or suspects, numerous implausible theories surfaced. Speculation about the family's supposed vast wealth leading to their murder. As the investigation had stalled, no suspects had emerged for the probe. The theory of a robbery had eventually been abandoned because the killer had left money and valuables intact, suggesting the sole motive had been to kill family members. Furthermore, the fact that the house had lost power on the night of the murder suggested that the murderer had been someone who was familiar with the location of the electrical panel. The attacker's ability to control the house in darkness showed that he had prior knowledge of the house's layout. When reviewing the case, an investigator replayed Kathy's emergency call looking for missed clues. An important hint was detected in the recording. The recording captured Kathy's frantic attempts to explain the situation, her words interrupted by crying and sobbing. At the end of the call, Kathy mentioned her husband's name and talked to him in Cantonese. This piqued the investigators' interest, causing them to translate her words. The translation revealed that Kathy was pleading with Robert not to leave Kathy home alone. This was significant since Robert had left Kathy at the scene of the crime to pick up her parents, despite the potential danger. With 5 people brutally murdered and the killer possibly still inside, Robert's calm aroused suspicion, as if he already knew for certain that Kathy was safe. The police finally identified Robert as the main suspect. A crucial discovery was that Robert had a key to Min's house, which had been given to Robert shortly before the tragedy. However, Robert never mentioned this during questioning, and his wife Kathy was unaware that Min had given him the key. It was Brenda who unintentionally revealed this important information to investigators. Further investigation showed that Robert's claim of being a successful ear, nose, and throat doctor was false. Although he had a medical degree, he had never had a stable job in the field. There were rumors that he had fled to Australia to avoid punishment for alleged bribery charges in China. In Australia, Robert failed to establish a successful career and wasted his remaining savings on unsuccessful business ventures. After moving to North Keeping, he became idle, relying on his wife's income. Once the guardianship papers for Brenda were finalized, Robert acted as if he had inherited the Lynn family's estate. His first move was to force Yun's parents out of their home, which Min had bought for them. Although the house remained in Min's name, Min and Kathy's parents were still allowed to stay in their own home that was also purchased for them. Based on this information, investigators suspected he had a long-standing plot to usurp Min family property, money, and profitable business. However, the police could not arrest Robert yet due to a lack of concrete evidence. Through a combination of interrogation, surveillance, and other methods, the investigation team was granted permission to install hidden cameras in the Robert household. They hoped to gather the evidence needed to prove Robert's guilt. The breakthrough came sooner than expected, starting with an unexpected revelation from Kathy during an interrogation. Kathy mentioned Robert's preference for a specific brand of shoes. A few years ago, Robert bought 2 pairs of limited edition sneakers that he really liked. He had worn out one pair and thrown it away, but kept the other pair at home. What's important to note is that Robert's shoe size, 9.5, matched the size of the shoes worn by the killers. The crucial evidence was caught on a hidden camera, which showed Robert deliberately destroying the box that held the remaining pair of shoes. A search warrant was issued for Robert's home. During the search, police found a new pair of size 9.5 sneakers with the same pattern as the pattern collected at the crime scene. In the garage, they discovered a small bloodstain, which was later confirmed by a forensic examiner to be a bloodstain containing DNA from all 5 victims of the Lynn family, linking it to the crime scene. In May 2011, 2 years after the tragedy, Robert was officially arrested. He denied involvement, claiming the blood stains in his garage appeared after returning from Lynn's house following the tragedy. He also downplayed the importance of the sneakers, saying they were new and he threw away the old shoes. While in prison awaiting trial, Robert shared a cell with a number of informants whom the police had arranged. During a conversation, he confessed to carefully planning the crime and covering his tracks. He bought the weapon in a store without surveillance cameras and gave his wife tea so she wouldn't wake up while he was committing the crime. He removed the hammer, shoes, gloves, and clothes so police would never find them. At trial, Robert denied everything. The only evidence against him is what the informant said and some indirectly clues. The jury failed to find Robert guilty and he was released on bail in December 2015. But when the trial resumed in June 2016, another informant said Robert had confessed to being haunted by Brenda since she was 13 years old. Brenda was questioned again and tearfully said Robert forced her to have sex when she first moved in. She kept silent about the abuse for years because she was afraid of what Robert might do. With this new information and other evidence, Robert was officially convicted of all charges. He was given 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 1 for each murder. All of his appeals were rejected. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Christy Lynn Mullins. Christy Lynn Mullins was born on August 28, 1960, in Columbus, Ohio, one of 6 children in a large family. They lived in a quiet neighborhood, away from the noise and chaos of the city. In the summer of 1975, 14-year-old Christy spent most of her days socializing with friends and family, often going to the local neighborhood swimming pool. In late August, Christy babysat for a family friend on the evening of August 22nd. The next day, August 23rd, she woke up around noon and decided to go swimming to cool off. She invited her sister Kim to join her and they went to the residential area. While Kim went swimming, Christy relaxed on a deck chair. A short time later, Kim went ashore and found Christy nowhere to be seen, but Kim decided not to look for her and instead stayed at the pool. Surprisingly, when Kim returned home, Christy was not there. Hours passed and Christy still hadn't come home. Kim became even more worried. She decided to look for Christy and ran into a neighbor who told her that the police had found the body of a young woman a few miles away, but they had not been able to identify it. Kim rushed home to tell her parents, who immediately called the police to report Christy missing. It was very likely that the body found belonged to Christy, so the police directed them to the morgue for identification. Although it was difficult to recognize the identity of the body due to the severely bruised face, Christy's mother eventually accepted that the body was Christy's, her beloved daughter, thanks to the birthmark on her leg. Police later explained to the family what had happened. It turned out that at about 2:30 p.m. that same day, a man reported finding a body in the woods behind the local shopping center. He, his wife, and son had gone there to buy toys, but before entering the store, their son wanted to take a walk on the trail behind the building. This path was a popular walking path leading to a river and the area was famous for its beauty. Together with his parents, the son went for a walk on this trail. During their hike, they came across a disturbing scene about 10 yards down the trail. A man was kneeling on top of someone and repeatedly beating him with a wooden object. When he saw the family, he immediately ran away. The father rushed to the scene and found a seriously injured little girl covered in blood. His wife, who had medical training, checked the victim's pulse, but there was none. The father quickly went to a nearby shopping center and called the police from a store. He and his wife provided investigators with a detailed description of the suspect, who was a tall, slim young man with long black hair, wearing jeans shorts and boots, about 20 years old. Police created a sketch of the suspect based on their description and distributed it to patrol officers. However, the investigation of the crime scene yielded no results. The wooden object used as the murder weapon was found, but they discovered no other evidence linking the perpetrator. Notably, the victim's hands were tied with a telephone cord and her bikini top was pulled down. Her t-shirt and shoes were found next to her body. Despite these signs, forensic experts found no evidence that a sexual assault had occurred. Luckily, detectives were able to continue their investigation thanks to new information from Kim, who told them about a conversation between Christy and a friend, Carol. The police summoned Carol. Carol recounted to police a suspicious phone call she had received from a stranger claiming to be a local DJ. The man had called her to talk about a fake cheerleading competition at the state fair, which was supposedly being held behind the local shopping mall. He announced the event would start at 1:45 p.m. and had told Carol to wait for someone at the entrance to the forest trail. The police were skeptical about Carol's story, and when they dug deeper, they discovered many inconsistencies. According to Carol, she had originally planned to attend the event with her sister. But they had run into Christy and her sister on the way. Carol then invited Christy to join her and they left their sisters behind to go to the mall. However, when they arrived at the entrance to the woods, no one appeared and Carol claimed that she had gone to the shopping center to ask for the time. When she turned around, Christy was gone. The police investigation revealed that there had been no cheerleading competitions in town, casting doubt on the reason for Carol and Christy's trip to the woods. Police suspected that the mysterious phone call might have been a ruse to lure Carol into the woods, but they were unable to trace the call to identify the caller. Further investigation revealed discrepancies in Carol's story. She claimed to have met Christy and her sister on the street, but Kim said they had been at the pool and Carol had come to meet them there. Additionally, Christy's mother reported a strange conversation with Carol later that evening, which raised further suspicions. Carol apologized to Christy's mother and revealed that she had been the intended target of a murder involving two people. However, she quickly retracted her words and left. Christy's mother reported this to the police. The police questioned Carol again, but she denied making a statement and stuck to her original story. Carol was then given a polygraph test, which did not reveal any signs of deception when Carol answered key questions. As a result, investigators shifted focus away from Carol and pursued other leads. Police intensified their search for the killer 3 days after Christy's murder. A police officer patrolling the streets of Columbus spotted a man who bore a striking resemblance to a sketch of Christy's killer. Patrol officers quickly called detectives to the scene and asked Jack to accompany them to the station for questioning. The man, Jack Carmen, 25, agreed to go with them. However, the police soon realized that Jack was severely mentally disabled, with an IQ of about 50 points. Results based on many different tests. As a result, Jack had limited communication skills and could not read or write. He was cared for by a specialist medical facility and lived in a supervised apartment. Despite these challenges, detectives could not ignore the striking resemblance between Jack and the composite sketch of the suspect in Christy's case. The interrogation process was extremely difficult due to Jack's limited ability to understand and answer questions. Most of the time, he just answered with one word or stayed silent. The detectives began to question whether Jack was capable of fully understanding their questions. To improve the situation, they had to ask very simple and specific questions. After 6 hours of questioning, detectives were finally starting to get results. They were finally able to extract a confession from Jack. According to his testimony, on the day in question he had left his apartment, taken the bus to the shopping center and bought a shirt and pants. As Jack walked through the parking lot, he saw Christy sitting on a fence near the entrance to a wooded trail. He approached her, tied her up by tying her hands, and then dragged her into the woods where he carried out the assault. After the attack, Christy tried to run away, but Jack quickly caught up with her. He picked up a nearby piece of wood and repeatedly hit her in the head. Jack then ran to the main road in front of the shopping center and boarded the bus. The next day, police took Jack to the forest where he allegedly committed the crime. There, he pointed out the exact spot and provided specific details that only the perpetrator would know, including the fact that the piece of wood used to strike the victim broke in half. Investigators also verified the testimony, asking the couple who found Christy to identify the person they had seen on the day of the incident. Both identified the man they had seen as Jack. As a result, Jack was charged with multiple offenses, including assault and murder. The prosecution chose to include it in the charges. The prosecutor initially sought the death penalty, but Jack's lawyer negotiated a deal. In exchange for a life sentence, Jack would plead guilty before the judge, thereby avoiding execution. The case moved swiftly, with thousands of people following. Just 11 days after the murder, on September 3rd, Jack was sentenced to life in prison. However, after the trial, public opinion began to shift, and many people started to question Jack's guilt. As more details about his confession and his background emerged in the media, people began to wonder whether he was truly capable of committing such a heinous crime. Those who knew Jack found it hard to believe that he was capable of the crime. He was a passive, timid, and compliant person who would agree to anything if pushed hard enough. In the past, he had even taken the blame for something he didn't do, like the time he claimed responsibility for breaking a boiler at a charity center, when in fact someone else was to blame. This behavior raised doubts about his ability to make a genuine confession to the crime. His supporters felt that the police must have manipulated him into confessing by feeding him information and asking pressured questions. For instance, if the police asked him if he hit the victim with a piece of wood, and he answered yes, they could use that as a confession. However, this approach can be unreliable, especially considering Jack's tendency to confess to anything when under threat. Even the mention of the electric chair was enough to make him agree to whatever the detectives wanted. Furthermore, the police took Jack to the crime scene at the same time as the witnesses, a married couple who later identified him at the police station. This raised concerns that the witnesses had been biased, as they had already seen Jack and knew he was a suspect, despite the police's claims that they never crossed paths. There were several red flags surrounding Jack's alleged involvement in the crime. For instance, the police failed to locate the bus driver or any passengers who claimed to have seen Jack on his way to the city center, which contradicted his own statement. Moreover, multiple people at the charity organization building where Jack lived and worked said to have seen him at around 1:30 p.m. This created a major timing issue. Even if Jack had left immediately after being seen by these witnesses, the bus ride to the shopping center on the outskirts of town would have taken at least 40 minutes. Given the crime was committed at 1:50 p.m., it was logistically impossible for Jack to have made it on time. This cast serious doubts about Jack's guilt and raised suspicions that the police may have coerced his confession. Christy's parents, too, began questioning whether Jack was the true culprit. At the height of the controversy, approximately 70 individuals gathered in front of City Hall on September 9th to draw attention to the case and advocate for a comprehensive investigation. They established a public committee aimed at securing justice for Jack. As a result, Jack was assigned a new lawyer, who swiftly petitioned for a case review. After several months, a judge dismissed Jack's original confession and ordered a new trial, putting the onus on the prosecution to establish his guilt from the beginning. This marked a daunting challenge for the prosecution, making their case almost unviable. Norman Mills, Christie's father, began his own investigation while preparations for the new trial were underway. Dissatisfied with the way the detectives had worked, Norman took matters into his own hands. Immediately after the murder, Norman and several neighbors searched the area where Christie was found. They discovered a bloody pair of jean shorts and men's underwear in the woods. They turned the items over to the police, who had initially missed them. It was unclear whether these items were related to the case or if they had been examined for evidence. Jack's new trial began in 1977, 2 years after the murder. The defense had two tasks: first and foremost, to prove Jack's innocence and also to try to identify the real killer. In fact, they already had a pretty strong candidate for the role, who they considered to be the prime suspect. The man who found Christ's body along with his wife was Henry Newell, who was 25 years old at the time of the murder. At the beginning of the trial, Jack's lawyers had amassed an impressive list of reasons to suspect Henry of murder, and during the trial, the list grew even longer. Initially, Henry attracted attention because of his criminal record. Beginning in his teenage years, he had been arrested multiple times for various crimes, serving 3 prison sentences. He had successfully escaped from prison twice before being captured and brought back. At the time of Jack's trial, he was serving his 4th sentence, this time for burning down a house to collect insurance money. Lawyers also reviewed evidence from Christ's case and found some very suspicious details in his testimony. Henry said he had found her body, ran over, and threw a bloody piece of wood aside. He explained this by saying that he was in a state of shock at the time. But acting like that still seemed odd. Why did he pick up the murder weapon and throw it from his body for no apparent reason? He also testified that he thought the girl was still alive, so he took off his shirt and pressed it to her face. This action also raised questions. Did he actually try to stop the bleeding, or was his shirt stained with blood during the murder, and he needed to justify it somehow? Jack's lawyer found a store clerk in the mall where Henry had run to call the police. She said he was not wearing a shirt but was wearing jean shorts, although by the time police arrived, he was wearing a different pair of pants. The employee also confirmed that Henry had a new bruise on his face, as if someone had hit him. When asked why she didn't immediately report this to the police, she said no one had asked her. The officers themselves should have noticed this bruising but ignored it. Henry also agreed to take a polygraph test, but he ended up vomiting right on the machine. Another witness was Henry's neighbor, who said that on the night of the murder, he had talked to Henry and noticed many new scratches on his hands. The man also mentioned seeing a telephone cord in Henry's garage that was the same color and shape as the cord used to tie the victim's hands. That's not all. The neighbor said that Henry had once told him a very strange story. He claimed to know Christ's 14-year-old friend Carol and that they had once swum naked together in the pool. This story shocked everyone involved in the case. It turned out that Henry was acquainted with Carol, who was also directly involved in the case. His wife, Pam, also testified in court, saying everything had happened exactly as they told police on the first day. They had gone to the mall, and their son wanted to go for a walk. They went into the woods and found the body. Pam added that up until that point, Henry had remained at home and only stepped outside for a few minutes to scare away neighborhood children who had begun throwing firecrackers into their yard. Carol also testified, saying she had never met Henry. She was also asked about her intentions in telling Christ's mother that things should not have escalated to this point, but Carol again claimed she did not remember saying anything like that. Henry himself repeated his story without any changes and insisted that he had nothing to do with the crime. One of the most important moments of the trial was the showing of the entire recording of Jack's interrogation. After watching it, it became clear to everyone that Jack had simply been forced to confirm the detective's words that he had committed murder. Jack barely said anything and didn't seem to fully understand what the police wanted from him. But that was not the most important moment of the trial. On the fifth day, another unexpected witness appeared. It was Bobby, Henry's stepson, and his testimony truly shocked everyone following the case. Bobby revealed that that day, Henry had indeed gone out of the house to chase away the children who had thrown firecrackers into the yard. When Henry returned home, his shirt and sandals were missing, and Henry had scars on his hands and face. Bobby was told by his parents that they would be going to the shopping center, but when they arrived, they instead took him on a walk in the woods behind the center. Bobby claims he never asked to go for a walk, which contradicts what his parents initially said. During the walk, they found Henry's torn sandal and then Christy's body. Bobby's mother instructed him not to tell anyone about what he saw. At the trial, Bobby's grandmother testified about a disturbing comment made by Henry during Christy's farewell ceremony. After expressing her sadness about Christy's death, Henry replied, "It will teach her to keep her mouth shut." Another witness, Henry's friend, came forward and said that Henry had confessed to him that he accidentally killed Christy. Although the evidence clearly pointed to Henry's involvement, the prosecutor surprisingly announced that they would not pursue a case against Henry. The prosecutor also claimed that the initial investigation was handled correctly, despite acknowledging that the police missed or ignored many clues from the beginning. The public was outraged by this decision, leading the prosecutor to change his mind 2 days later and agree to reopen the investigation into Christy's death. Christy's father refused to give up on seeking justice and filed a civil lawsuit against Jack, but not because he believed Jack was involved in the murder. Rather, he hoped to gain access to the case files and gather more information. Unfortunately, this effort also proved unsuccessful. The case had remained stagnant until 2013, when Henry died of terminal cancer. Despite this, in the same year, former attorney John Aller became interested in the case and conducted his own investigation. He contacted all parties involved in gathering new information. Christy's relatives had provided John with a box of records that Christy's father had collected. After reviewing the records and talking to dozens of people, John believed that Henry was the culprit behind Christy's murder. John's investigation revealed that Carol had bought marijuana from Henry, which made him suspect that Henry was involved in the crime. This new discovery created a possible connection between Henry and Carol, which could explain why Carol brought Christy to the forest. One theory is that Carol planned to meet Henry in the forest to buy an illegal substance. It's possible that Carol invited Christy along, using the DJ story as a cover. A more sinister explanation suggests that Carol brought Christy to the forest at Henry's request, intending for him to harm her. However, Christy resisted, as evidenced by Henry's injuries, and he ultimately killed her. When John took over the case, Henry had passed away from cancer at the age of 63. However, John continued his work and released a book about Christy's murder. The release of the book sparked a new wave of interest, and Christy's relatives demanded that the investigation be reopened. Some of Henry's relatives also confirmed that Henry was the one who killed the girl. This led to the reopening of the murder investigation in May 2014. Detectives re-examined the evidence, interviewed dozens of people, and reassessed Henry's confession. They re-examined Christy's clothes and found traces of semen, but they were too small for DNA analysis. The investigation lasted until late 2015, when detectives announced that Henry was the one who had committed the crime. But because he had passed away, the case could not go to court. The investigation ended with the conclusion that Henry had left home, gone to the road behind the shopping center, seen Christy alone, and decided to assault her with a telephone cord, taking her deep into the woods. Henry had attacked Christy, injuring her. Then he killed her with a piece of wood. Returning home, Henry recounted the incident to his wife, and the two began to make plans to avoid punishment. For many years afterward, Carol never revealed the truth. Police later apologized to Christie's family for their careless handling of the incident. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Debbie Lynn Randall. Debbie Lynn Randall was born on August 21, 1962, in Marietta, Georgia, to a loving family with two older brothers. Her parents divorced when she was young. Her mother later married a man named Roy, who became Debbie's stepfather. The family lived in a small apartment building. Debbie was a cheerful and sociable child. On the evening of January 13, 1972, after dinner with her family, Debbie went to the laundromat to supervise the laundry. Debbie's home was just a short distance from the laundromat, so her mother wasn't overly concerned about her safety when she was sent to do the laundry. The original plan was for Debbie to go with her brother, but he was feeling unwell, so Debbie's mother sent her husband to pick up the laundry and Debbie went with her stepfather, holding a box of laundry detergent. At the laundromat, Roy put the clothes in two washing machines and left, leaving Debbie waiting for the cycle to finish. After the wash, Debbie had to walk home and ask someone to pick up her clean clothes because she couldn't carry them herself. However, when the laundry should have been finished and Debbie still hadn't returned, her mother began to feel uneasy. It was getting dark outside, so she and her husband decided to walk to the laundromat to look for Debbie, but she was nowhere to be found. The employee informed them that Debbie had left the laundromat some time ago and had not returned. The news worried her mother, who began searching the surrounding streets with Roy. As they walked, they discovered a suspicious scene. A short distance from the laundromat, in the parking lot next to a car, there was a spilled detergent. Since Debbie had brought a box of detergent with her, her mother suspected that it might be hers. Despite expanding their search to the entire parking lot and the surrounding area, they found no other sign of Debbie. Neighbors who knew the family joined in the search. Debbie's mother decided to call the police for help. The police investigated the parking lot and discovered their first clue: spilled laundry detergent just inches from a parked car, and on the car door, they found several clear fingerprints. The police found fresh fingerprints on the car that were located lower than the handle, which seemed unusual. They suspected that an unknown person might have grabbed the girl while touching the car at this spot. The officers collected the fingerprints and sent them to forensic experts for analysis. They also started searching for the car's owner to confirm whether the fingerprints belonged to them. With no other leads, the police began a thorough search of the area, looking for new clues or witnesses. The laundry worker reported that she did not see anything suspicious. Debbie had waited for the laundry to finish, then left the building with the detergent box. It is possible that she went home to ask someone to pick up her clothes. Police discovered the first key witness, 12-year-old Sandra, who said that as she and her friend walked to a laundromat to drop off dirty clothes, they saw a man grab a girl on the street, drag her to his car parked near the laundromat, and drive away quickly while she screamed for help. Sandra and her friend were lucky to avoid the man's car. Debbie screamed in a car, but he did not slow down. At the time, Sandra did not consider what she saw to be a kidnapping. She assumed the man was a family member who had come to pick Debbie up, possibly against her will. So Sandra did not report the incident to the authorities or tell any adults about it. After learning about Debbie's disappearance, Sandra provided essential details to investigators. She described the abductor's vehicle as a dark-colored, likely 1957 model pickup truck. She also described the man as young, white, with thick dark hair, wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and black work boots. Another key witness, a girl who lived in the same building as Debbie, shared her observations. She saw a dark-colored pickup truck drive past the apartment building on the evening in question. The girl initially thought the driver of the car was her uncle, but when he stopped in front of her and looked at her, she realized it was someone else. She described the driver as a white man with medium-length dark hair and provided additional details about his appearance. She also reported that he parked his car near their building, next to the same car where a detergent spill would later be discovered. Another witness, a man who lived near the girl's home, reported that a dark-colored pickup truck, possibly a Dodge, almost hit him while he was driving to visit his wife in the hospital. The driver appeared to be in his 30s with dark hair, and the witness saw a girl in the car trying to escape while the driver held her with one arm. Based on these accounts, the police believed Debbie had been kidnapped. They circulated the suspect's vehicle to all patrol units and created a composite sketch of the driver based on descriptions from witnesses. Some officers searched for similar vehicles and checked their owners, while others conducted a wide-ranging search for the girl. As the days passed, more volunteers and police from surrounding towns joined the search. Police questioned Debbie's family, and after investigation, they were all cleared as potential suspects. Debbie's biological father, who lived in the same city, was notified of her disappearance at work and immediately joined the search effort. Police also ran background checks on convicted criminals who lived near Debbie's home, but none of them appeared to be viable suspects. The search for Debbie continued for over 2 weeks without any significant leads. It wasn't until January 29th, when a group of students joined the search teams, that a breakthrough occurred. The students were sent to search a wooded area several miles from Debbie's house. After nearly 5 hours of searching, one of the students noticed a set of tracks on the ground that led from the trail into the forest, suggesting that something had been dragged into the woods. As they followed the trail about 150 feet into the woods, they discovered a human body and immediately contacted the police. Upon further inspection, they quickly identified the body as Debbie Randall. She was wearing the same outfit her mother had described on the day she went missing. However, her shoes were missing. The medical examination of Debbie's body revealed that she had been strangled to death and had also been sexually assaulted. A single dark hair was found on her body, which was likely to belong to the killer. Although DNA analysis was not available at the time, experts were able to examine the hair under a microscope and estimate that it came from a man between the ages of 18 and 30. The investigation then focused on the victim's clothing, which was covered in soil. Police enlisted the help of a geologist to analyze the soil, along with a forensic team. They discovered that some of the soil contained a type of soil mined less than 10 miles from their town called North Georgia clay. However, other stains on the clothing were found to be from a different type of clay, mined by a company just 2 miles from where the body was found. Police theorized that the perpetrator did not kill Debbie immediately, but rather drove her to remote areas, sexually assaulting her in one location and killing her in another, before finally dumping her body in the woods. Police believe the killer may have been hired by one of the nearby mining companies. After contacting these companies, the police searched the employees of both companies but did not find the suspect or the vehicle described by the victims. Furthermore, they found fingerprints near the abduction site, but unfortunately, when these fingerprints were compared to the suspects, there was no match. Debbie's death sent shockwaves through the city, with thousands attending her funeral. Police repeatedly ran into roadblocks in their search for clues. Police officer Morris Nix investigated many suspects and eventually narrowed the list down to 4 people. For Morris Nix, Debbie's murder remained a top priority throughout his career. The case took a breakthrough with the creation of the FBI's DNA database. Experts successfully extracted a genetic profile from hair found on Debbie's body, which was then entered into the database. However, no matches were found. In 2015, 43 years after the murder, police reopened the case and decided to re-examine the victim's clothing using modern technology. The clothing had been stored in an evidence vault since the crime. When re-examined, Some of the evidence had degraded over time, resulting in only a partial DNA profile. In 2018, Debbie's mother gave an interview, expressing her hope that her daughter's killer would be found. After the tragedy, she found it unbearable to stay in their apartment, so she moved to another city. Her only wish was for the case to be solved before she died. Sadly, she died of cancer at the age of 78, just weeks after the interview, and was buried next to Debbie. In 2019, the local police department received additional funding, which allowed them to conduct a more thorough analysis of Debbie's clothing. This time, experts successfully extracted a full DNA sample, but unfortunately, the perpetrator's DNA was still not found in the FBI database. Debbie's father was interviewed and shared that he thought about his daughter every day for decades. Sadly, he passed away in 2022, shortly after the interview. Police turned their attention to the first piece of evidence they had, DNA. They partnered with a Florida company that specializes in an advanced DNA analysis technique called genomics. Police provided the company with all the biological samples they had collected over the years and waited for the results. Experts created a DNA profile of the suspect and began searching for his relatives in public genetic databases. After analyzing thousands of potential relatives of the killer, investigators narrowed their search to a family in Marietta. In 2023, police asked the family to provide a DNA sample, which they agreed to. Analysis showed that the killer was indeed a close relative of the family. Experts re-examined the family tree and quickly identified a man named William Rose. However, William Rose committed suicide in 1974, just 2 years after Debbie's murder. Police obtained a warrant to exhume William Rose's remains and took a sample of William Rose's DNA for analysis. 51 years after Debbie's murder, police finally identified William Rose as the killer. At the time of the murder, William Rose, 24, lived in the same building as Debbie's family, and he visited them frequently. The case has finally been solved. Debbie's brother, Melvin, is the only living relative. Melvin attended a press conference and expressed gratitude to everyone involved in solving the case that lasted more than 50 years. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jessica Dishon. Jessica Dishon was born on May 2, 1982, in the small town of Shepherdsville, Kentucky. As the eldest of 3 children, Jessica took on significant responsibilities from a young age, helping her parents care for her 2 younger brothers while they worked. At age 15, Jessica started working part-time at a restaurant to save money to buy her first car, a red Pontiac. A few years later, she bought the car she wanted. Despite her job, Jessica excelled in school and began planning to attend college, where she hoped to study accounting. In the fall of 1999, 17-year-old Jessica was about to start her senior year of high school. She had also started dating a boy, which made her very happy. On the morning of Friday, September 10th, Jessica's parents went to work, and her younger brothers caught the bus to school. However, Jessica did not leave for school as planned. Later that day, around noon, Jessica's mother returned home from work and noticed something unusual. Jessica's car was still parked in front of the house. The mother went to Jessica's room, thinking that maybe she had overslept and missed school. But Jessica was not in her bedroom. The mother then considered the possibility that Jessica might have gotten a ride to school from her father, so she called him to ask. However, he told her that he had gone to work alone that morning. Jessica's mother suspected something was wrong with her car, so she took out a spare key to try to start the car. When she approached the car, the driver's door was slightly open, and Jessica's cell phone was lying on the seat with the numbers 9 and 1 displayed on the screen, indicating that she had tried to call 911. Jessica's shoes and keys were found under the front seat, while her textbooks, work clothes, and purse were in the back seat. Jessica's mother was worried about Jessica's safety. It was obvious that she had tried to call for help but was unsuccessful. Furthermore, Jessica could not leave her belongings in the car and leave. Jessica's parents contacted her school, learning that Jessica had not come to class that day. When Jessica's best friend at work called her parents a few hours later, saying that Jessica had not come to work, they became even more worried about Jessica. Jessica's parents immediately contacted the police, but the sheriff downplayed the situation, suggesting that Jessica might have wandered off and would return home on her own. Despite Jessica's parents' pleas, the sheriff refused to open an investigation. Undeterred, Jessica's parents contacted relatives, friends, and acquaintances, but no one had any information about Jessica's whereabouts. They then searched the entire town, scouring the area, but there was no sign of her. The next morning, Jessica's parents returned to the sheriff's office to report that she had not returned home. The sheriff sent 2 officers to check Jessica's car. However, the officers searched the car without wearing gloves, potentially destroying evidence. Furthermore, the officers did not search Jessica's room. Feeling frustrated with the police, Jessica's parents sought the help of the local media, hoping to draw attention to Jessica's disappearance and the police's lack of attention. Jessica's family and friends, led by her father and Uncle Stanley, launched a search for Jessica. They also distributed flyers with information about Jessica. Fearing the worst, they focused their search on an area near a river, which was known to be a crime hub. For hours, Jessica's family members thoroughly searched the challenging terrain near the river but couldn't find any sign of Jessica. The next morning, Jessica's parents were at home, and their son was playing in the yard. Suddenly, he rushed inside, saying he had heard a faint cry for help that sounded exactly like his sister's voice. Jessica's father immediately grabbed his gun and ran outside to find the source of the screams. At the same time, his brother arrived and joined the search. They quickly noticed smoke coming from the property of their neighbor, 40-year-old David Brooks. As they approached, they saw Brooks undressing on his property. Jessica's father asked Brooks for permission to search his farm, but Brooks refused and told them to leave. This was not the only unusual behavior Brooks displayed. Before Jessica's disappearance, the 2 families had a normal relationship. However, soon after, he would drive slowly past their house, staring at them with an ominous smile. After seeing Brooks burning clothes on their property, Jessica's parents went back to the police, shared their concerns and asked them to come and meet Brooks with the dogs. The police agreed. The dogs were given some of Jessica's clothes to track her scent. They led the police to Brooks's fire pit, but no significant evidence was found. However, the dogs did find black gloves in one of Brooks's sheds that smelled like decomposition. During the search, no concrete evidence was found. Frustrated with the police, Jessica's father contacted the FBI for help. The FBI usually does not get involved in missing persons cases based on the family's request, but this time they decided to investigate immediately. After Jessica's parents presented the case and the family's findings, the FBI opened a full-scale investigation. The FBI proceeded to collect fingerprints from Jessica's room and her car, confiscating all potential evidence for further analysis. Additionally, investigators conducted a comprehensive search of the area using helicopters and volunteers. They thoroughly examined the pond near Jessica's home. The FBI searched Brooks' farm and found a printed photo of Jessica. This discovery led the FBI to strongly suspect Brooks' involvement in her disappearance. They also suspected his 35-year-old brother, Joseph, although despite a thorough search, the FBI found no evidence. Due to lack of incriminating evidence, the investigation focused on searching the surrounding area. 17 days after Jessica went missing, police received a call on September 27th. A woman was driving along a road near the river. Noticing something unusual near a tree, the woman stopped to check and was horrified to see a body. She called the police immediately. When FBI agents arrived, they discovered the body of a young woman who had suffered severe trauma. She was missing several fingers and toes. A rope tied around her leg showed traces of red and silver paint. Additionally, some of her clothing was missing, suggesting that she may have been sexually assaulted, leading the FBI to develop disturbing theories about the murder. Medical experts later confirmed the identity and determined that Jessica had been strangled. Her body also showed extensive bruising. Her limbs and fingers had been separated after death, suggesting that she was still alive when this happened. However, the most disturbing fact was that Jessica had survived for approximately 3 days after she went missing. This meant that the police had the opportunity to rescue her. But unfortunately, they did not take any action to do so. After the body was discovered, the FBI re-interviewed Brooks, who changed his story. He initially said he had seen Jessica near her home, but later said he had not seen her. His alibi was disputed by his wife, and he failed a polygraph test, prompting the FBI to arrest him and proceed to trial. The FBI said the likelihood of a conviction was low due to a lack of concrete evidence. While they had some troubling clues that pointed to his involvement, they were circumstantial and inconclusive. As the trial progressed, detectives continued to search for additional evidence. During a re-examination of Brooks' car, they found a rope similar to the one used to tie Jessica up. However, analysis showed no DNA on the rope. Brooks' trial began in January 2003. His attorney maintained his innocence, citing a lack of evidence. During the trial, it was revealed that investigators had found the victim's missing limbs but had not properly preserved them, causing them to decompose and lose potential evidence. The remaining circumstantial evidence was insufficient to convict, and the jury was unable to reach a unanimous decision, resulting in Brooks' acquittal. Under state law, he could only be brought back if new evidence was discovered. Jessica's parents were devastated by the outcome. The parents also felt that if the police had done their job properly, Jessica might still be alive. Over time, the case went cold and was largely abandoned, leaving the family without closure. In 2012, a new detective, Lynn Hunt, joined the local police department and was tasked with reviewing unsolved cases. Lynn Hunt began by examining the murder case of Jessica. However, she was shocked to find that the original investigation was poorly handled, with case files containing errors and lacking key information from interviews with relevant parties. The evidence was also not properly documented, forcing Lynn Hunt to start the investigation from scratch 13 years after the crime. Hunt met with Jessica's family and obtained a box of her belongings that had been kept in her car at the time of the murder. One of her brothers, now an adult, had kept the box since the police returned the items to the family. Lynn Hunt was again disappointed by the careless handling of the evidence, as it had not been stored according to protocol. Her efforts paid off when she discovered a crucial document, Brooks' medical examination report, which revealed that Brooks had an IQ of 61, which is considered low. With a low IQ, Brooks may not have fully understood the questions and may have given incomplete answers. All of this led Lynn Hunt to think that this man might not have anything to do with the case. Lynn Hunt began to consider other suspects. Lynn Hunt conducted an extensive review of everyone connected to the case and those living in the surrounding area. This investigation continued until September 2014, nearly 15 years after Jessica's death. A coworker contacted Lynn Hunt with information about an inmate at the Kentucky State Prison who claimed to know who killed Jessica. Lynn Hunt initially dismissed the information as unreliable. Many inmates make up stories to get released early. However, Lynn Hunt verified the information before dismissing it. Lynn Hunt visited the prison and met a man who told her that he had previously shared a cell with another inmate. During conversations, the inmate revealed to him that he was responsible for the murder of Jessica Dishon. The informant revealed that Stanley Dishon, Jessica Dishon's uncle, had a dark secret. According to the informant, Stanley confessed to years of sexual abuse of Jessica while they lived under the same roof. He warned her that if she spoke about the abuse, he would kill her or someone she cared about. When Jessica started dating in the spring of 1999, Stanley became increasingly fearful that she might confide in her boyfriend about the abuse she had suffered at his hands. On September 10th, Stanley visited Jessica at her home when she was alone, and he saw her packing her belongings into her car. He approached her and asked her to end her relationship with her boyfriend. However, Jessica refused, threatening to expose Stanley's actions if he did not leave her alone. As Stanley threatened her, causing Jessica to reach for the phone to call 911. Stanley tried to grab her, but she broke free and ran back to her room. Stanley followed her into her room, striking her before binding her with her own sheets. Stanley then dragged her to an abandoned shed not far from where her body would later be discovered. Stanley held Jessica captive for several days, subjecting her to abuse and torture before ultimately killing her. Stanley then placed her body in a visible location near the road and buried the bloody sheets under the shed. Additionally, Stanley removed some of Jessica's limbs in an attempt to mislead the police, making it seem like the murder was the work of drug traffickers. Lynn Hunt was intrigued to discover that this crucial detail about the missing limbs had never been made public. Only Jessica's closest relatives were aware that her body had been mutilated, which meant the informant couldn't have fabricated this information. Furthermore, Stanley claimed to have buried Jessica's shoe under a broken tree near the shed. Determined to verify the informant's story, Lynn Hunt decided to search for buried evidence. With limited resources at the local police department, she enlisted the help of Jessica's brother and other relatives, keeping Stanley's possible guilt a secret. She did not report her suspected evidence to them. On the first day of the search, no clues were found despite searching the areas described by the informant. The next day, Jessica's brother and Lynn Hunt returned to the scene. On the way, they noticed an abandoned barn on the side of the road and decided to search. Inside the barn, they began digging. Their search uncovered a buried bed sheet. Lynn Hunt collected the evidence and rushed to Jessica's home. Since her disappearance, her parents had left her room unchanged, which helped in verifying the evidence. Upon comparison, Lynn Hunt confirmed that the bed sheet was indeed from Jessica's bedding, as it matched the pattern of the other linens and was missing from her bed. Following this discovery, Stanley was arrested and questioned by police. Although he appeared visibly shaken during questioning, he refused to confess to the crime. Stanley was eventually charged with murder and the case went to trial. This news shocked Jessica's father. The murderer he had been searching for was none other than his own brother Stanley Dishon. As the trial progressed, Lynn Hunt dug into Stanley's past to gather more evidence. She knew that he had assaulted Jessica, but her investigation uncovered that several of Stanley's female relatives had come forward to report that he had sexually abused them as children. Stanley would approach his relatives, claiming he was temporarily homeless, and asked to stay at their home. However, when left alone with the young girls in their homes, Stanley would sexually assault them, threatening them to ensure their silence. Based on multiple similar accounts, police deduced that Stanley had been engaging in this behavior for approximately 3 decades. Lynn Hunt knew full well that a conviction for murder would be difficult, given the lack of direct evidence, such as fingerprints or DNA, linking Stanley to the crime. Undeterred, Lynn Hunt continued her investigation and stumbled upon a box of old case files that had not been examined before. As she sifted through the boxes, Lynn Hunt was once again frustrated with the police who had originally handled the case. She noticed a letter dated June 26, 2002. A concerned person had written to the police at the time, recounting a story identical to one Lynn Hunt later heard from an inmate at the Kentucky penitentiary. In the summer of 2002, Stanley was serving a sentence for assaulting a minor family member. While in prison, he confided in a fellow inmate about killing his niece, Jessica. Unbeknownst to Stanley, his fellow inmate was a police informant who soon wrote a detailed letter to the police investigating the case, exposing the horrific events surrounding Jessica's death. However, police believed Brooks was the prime suspect at the time, causing them to ignore other potential leads. This inaction left Lynn Hunt deeply frustrated, becoming frustrated with the lack of professionalism of his colleagues. If the police had done their job properly, this case could have been solved in 2002. After all these years, Lynn Hunt could only hope that Stanley would finally face justice for his actions at the upcoming trial. The process began in 2015 when Stanley appeared in court, pleading not guilty. Jessica's parents were furious. The prosecution believed that a guilty verdict on the murder charges would be difficult due to a lack of evidence. There were also assault charges against other female family members. The prosecution would need these family members to testify in court, sharing explicit details about Stanley's actions against them. Given these challenges, the prosecution decided to offer Stanley a plea deal. In exchange for dropping the death penalty, Stanley would have to plead guilty to both the assaults on his relatives and Jessica's murder. Ultimately, Stanley accepted the deal and pleaded guilty. Jessica's parents, who wanted the truth, were unhappy with this arrangement, but Stanley remained silent in accordance with the terms of the plea deal. Stanley was sentenced to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Since he was 56 years old at the time of his conviction, he could be released at age 71. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore, the case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998, in the small Swedish town of Hu, where she grew up in a peaceful environment with her parents and older sister. Lisa was a kind, positive, and determined individual with a strong personality. She had already made up her mind to study architecture in Australia before completing her education. Lisa's love for travel was sparked by numerous trips with her parents to various countries, which also instilled in her a sense of independence from her teenage years. To earn her own money, she took on part-time jobs. In the summer of 2015, at the age of 17, Lisa landed her first job at a cafe located about 40 minutes from her home. Initially, her parents drove her to work, but soon her father gifted her a scooter. The scooter was a welcome gift, allowing her to commute to work independently. However, for the first few weeks, her father accompanied to ensure her safety, as she had limited experience driving on the roads. Lisa only works on weekends and her father always takes her to and from the cafe home. However, on June 7th, her father decided to let her drive herself. On that particular day, her parents visited her at work during lunch, when the cafe was very busy. They had a quick snack together before returning home. Later that day, at 6:23, Lisa sent her father a text saying she was leaving work. 3 minutes later, he received a call from her, but there was no answer when he picked up. He heard a soft voice over the phone, and the sound of a car door closing, leading him to believe that Lisa had accidentally dialed his number while talking to a coworker. Despite calling out her name several times, he got no response and eventually ended the call, expecting her to arrive home soon. However, as the minutes ticked by, Lisa failed to show up, causing her parents to grow increasingly worried. It was her first time driving the scooter alone, and her father was deeply concerned for her safety. He attempted to call her multiple times, but her phone was turned off. After a few more minutes of waiting, Lisa's father decided to drive along the route she would have taken, hoping to meet her along the way. He drove slowly, scanning the road for any sign of her, fearing she might have been in an accident. Despite his efforts, there was no sign of Lisa. The man arrived at the cafe where his daughter Lisa worked, but she wasn't there. However, Her scooter was parked outside, which initially calmed his nerves. But upon closer inspection, he noticed her scooter keys were still in the ignition and her helmet was hanging from the handle. This discovery raised his concerns, as Lisa would never leave her scooter unattended. Around the same time, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to get some information about her daughter's whereabouts. The cafe owner claimed to be unaware of Lisa's location and explained that she had spoken to her employees earlier, who said they were closing the cafe. The cafe owner then drove to the cafe and met up with Lisa's father. Together, they began searching the cafe and its surroundings. The cafe owner also enlisted the help of 4 friends who lived nearby. As the search continued, Lisa's mother and older sister checked the bus schedule, thinking it was possible that Lisa might have taken the bus instead of her scooter. They drove to the bus stop in their town, but unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Despite their efforts, Lisa's family was still unable to find her, and their concerns continued to grow. Lisa's relatives quickly contacted the police after realizing she was missing. It was nearly 1 p.m. Police quickly conducted an extensive search. A crucial discovery was Lisa's scooter, which was left in the parking lot with the keys still in it, leading the police to suspect she might have been abducted. Abductions are extremely rare in Sweden, particularly in Lisa's rural hometown, so the police responded swiftly by deploying multiple search teams with dogs and having officers canvass every nearby house. As news of Lisa's disappearance spread, her classmates and friends took to social media to raise awareness and potentially gather witness accounts. Despite the overnight search, no progress was made. On Monday morning, the police publicly announced Lisa's disappearance and urged anyone with information to come forward. Around the same time, a man working at a barn across from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives re-examined a barn previously inspected on the evening of Lisa's disappearance and discovered a glove. They presented the glove to Lisa's parents, who identified it as their daughter's, providing further evidence for the abduction theory. Police have stepped up the search by sending additional personnel and equipment to assist. By then, Lisa's disappearance had made national headlines, drawing hundreds of volunteers to the search. On Tuesday, the police received multiple leads. A group of volunteers searched a dirt road near the cafe, finding a phone case, receipt, ticket, and broken smartphone screen. After discovering these items, investigators confirmed that they all belonged to Lisa, so they concentrated the search in that area. Further investigation yielded additional parts of the broken smartphone, Lisa's ID, and more receipts. These items were all scattered along the same dirt road, increasing the police's certainty that Lisa was indeed a victim of abduction. The search for Lisa quickly gained a large amount of attention and support, with the number of people involved growing significantly each day. This case became the main news story in Sweden. Hundreds of volunteers from across the country flocked to participate in the search. A group of local volunteers specializing in finding missing people also participated in the search for Lisa. This made Lisa's search operation the largest in Sweden's modern history, with over 1,000 people involved. The police received numerous calls with potential leads. A woman reported a suspicious incident while she was jogging the day before Lisa went missing. A man standing next to his car stopped her on the road and asked for directions to an unfamiliar city in English. When she tried to help him using Google Maps, the man asked her to get into his car to show the route on his navigator. The woman found this request suspicious and refused, continuing her jog instead. The woman shared a crucial detail with the police. She believed she had seen the man before, among the workers repairing a barn across the road from the cafe where Lisa was last seen. On the day Lisa went missing, her co-workers noticed something unusual. A witness saw 2 men standing across the road from the cafe, stared at the shop. Although the witness didn't think much of it at the time, but she shared this detail with the police after Lisa's disappearance. The following morning, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings were found. As they went further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. It seemed that Lisa's abductor was throwing her belongings out of a vehicle. Despite all efforts, police and volunteers found no other clues in the area. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was driving home from the search when he noticed that the police tape had been removed from the barn where Lisa's glove was found. He decided to re-examine the barn for clues. The friend retrieved a flashlight from his car as it was getting dark and searched the barn for several minutes. He soon spotted something shiny on the floor, which turned out to be a woman's earring, along with an identical earring nearby. The man reported his discovery to the police, who then showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. After confirming that the earrings belonged to their daughter, the police conducted a more thorough search of the storehouse. Initially, the detective explained that the primary focus on the first day of the search was finding Lisa herself. As a result, the barn was not thoroughly inspected, and small items like earrings may have been overlooked. This time, however, numerous forensic experts and search dogs were brought in to aid in the investigation. During the more extensive search, the police found a piece of evidence behind one of the walls that initially seemed unrelated to the case: human feces. Forensic experts, however, proposed an intriguing theory. According to them, in the aftermath of committing severe crimes, the perpetrator's body often releases a significant amount of adrenaline, sometimes leading to a sudden and uncontrollable urge to defecate. It's not uncommon for perpetrators to lose control of their bodily functions due to adrenaline during a crime. Given that Lisa's glove and earrings were discovered in the storehouse, investigators suspected that if she was abducted, the perpetrator might have taken her to the storehouse. They considered the possibility that the perpetrator, under the influence of adrenaline, might have relieved themselves and left behind feces. These feces were subsequently sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded, and volunteers searched a farm approximately 2 miles from the cafe. The farm consisted of several large buildings with many employees, and the search team decided to inspect each one. Shortly after their arrival, 2 men appeared, communicating only in English as they didn't speak Swedish. One of them claimed that the police had already searched the farm, but the search team leader was skeptical. He believed he would have been informed if the police had indeed visited the farm, so he decided to proceed with the search. The 2 men observed the volunteers for a while before leaving. About an hour later, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cowshed. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones hidden underneath. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and confirmed that the items found were indeed Lisa's. To gather more evidence, forensic experts were dispatched to the farm for a thorough investigation. Detectives also investigated the story about 2 suspicious men who attempted to deter volunteers from searching the farm. During their inquiry, the police revisited a report from a woman who encountered an English-speaking man while jogging. The police had a potential suspect in mind. In the early stages of the search, they had visited nearby houses, includes a house where 2 Lithuanian brothers live with their wives. What caught the police's attention was that these 3 individuals did not speak Swedish and communicated in English, making them the only people in the area who did not speak the local language. Additionally, the police had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at a barn near the cafe and the farm where Lisa's helmet was found, indicating they were familiar with these locations. Furthermore, the dirt road where Lisa's belongings were discovered led directly to their house. The police decided to question the 3 individuals since they were the prime suspects. Meanwhile, forensic experts and volunteers arrived at the farm to continue their inspection. Their attention was drawn to an old, neglected trailer surrounded by tall grass, which seemed abandoned for years. However, the flattened grass near the door suggested recent activity. Trapped grass under the door also indicated it had been opened recently. Upon opening the door, the forensic experts were met with a strong smell of decay. Inside, they found a changing room with multiple clothing lockers. All are locked except one. This led them to suspect that Lisa's body might be inside one of the locked lockers. However, they eventually found Lisa's body in an unlocked closet, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small space, the perpetrator managed to fit Lisa inside. A rope was around her neck, and her head was covered with a large amount of tape. Her pants were pulled down, and her shirt was pulled up. Medical experts concluded that Lisa's cause of death was strangulation, with no evidence of sexual assault. Her clothing was sent to the lab for further examination. As news of her body's discovery spread rapidly across the country, the case had already been making headlines in Sweden. The brutality of Lisa's murder shocked the entire nation, as such crimes were extremely rare in Sweden. A strange and disturbing discovery was made on YouTube the same day her body was discovered. A video titled 13, featuring a countdown timer, had been posted 13 days before the murder. What makes this video scarier is that it was uploaded to a channel called Lisa Home. News of the video spread quickly through the media, leaving many people stunned by the series of coincidences. Some speculated that the murder had been predicted, but it was later revealed that the channel name and video title had been changed after Lisa's body was discovered, explaining the eerie coincidence. This has raised concerns that this could be a joke or an attempt to create another conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, the police worked day and night tirelessly to catch Lisa's murderer and solve the case as quickly as possible. At the time of the discovery, investigators had already questioned two brothers and a woman, all of whom denied any involvement in the murder. The three individuals claimed to have been at home at the time of the abduction, providing alibis for one another. According to their accounts, the older brother, Narigis, was asleep in his room while his wife was preparing dinner, and the younger brother was using the computer. Narigis also stated that around 8 p.m., he woke up and went to a gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police were skeptical of their alibis, as it was possible that the three were covering for each other. DNA samples were collected, but initially, no evidence directly linked any of them to the murder. However, this was short-lived. Forensic experts were working diligently in the storehouse and on the farm, utilizing all available resources, and soon their efforts paid off. In the storehouse, a small office-like room was discovered with a large window overlooking the cafe. Upon investigation, experts found 15 semen stains on the walls and floor near the window, suggesting someone had been standing there, watching the cafe employees, including Lisa, and engaging in self-gratification. The semen samples were sent to the lab for analysis, and DNA profiles were quickly extracted. All 15 samples matched the DNA of 35-year-old Narigis. Additionally, the feces found in the storehouse also belonged to him. In the adjacent room, previously used for storing cow's milk, forensic experts noticed a pipe about 2 feet above the floor with a thick layer of dust, except for a small strip. The size of this strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was also found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed it belonged to Narigis. On the floor beneath the pipe, a piece of the same rope was discovered. Experts analyzed it and found 2 DNA profiles, Lisa's and Narigis's. This discovery was an important clue for the police. This indicates that the rope used to kill Lisa was related to Narigis. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the room where Lisa's body was found, a hair belonging to her. Further investigation revealed DNA traces from Narigis on Lisa's jacket, leading the police to believe she was killed in that location. Police have been studying the evidence and using it to piece together what might have happened. Narigis had been watching the cafe for some time and waited for an opportunity to strike. When Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her, possibly asking for directions or using another tactic to gain her trust. He may have then asked her to get into his car to enter the route into the GPS system. Given Lisa's kind nature and willingness to help others, it's likely she agreed to help him. Once she was in the car, Narigis taped her mouth shut and drove her to the storehouse. There, he bound her with a rope. According to medical experts, the killer's adrenaline rush at the scene may have caused him to lose control of his bodily functions, resulting in defecation on the floor. After Lisa's death, the perpetrator placed her body in the car and drove to the farm, discarding her belongings along the way. He then hid her body in the trailer locker, covering it with old clothes. The entire ordeal, from abduction to hiding the body, took the perpetrator less than an hour. Narigis maintains his innocence despite mounting evidence against him. His wife and younger brother were released due to lack of evidence and promptly returned to their home country, Lithuania. The trial preparations were intense, with Narigis claiming his DNA was found at the crime scene because he had worked in the storehouse for a long time. He also provided an alibi, which was corroborated by his wife and brother, although their credibility was questionable. This defense may work in court, but the finding of Narigis' DNA on Lisa's clothing suggests direct contact on the day of the murder. Furthermore, a witness reported seeing Narigis' car near the cafe around the time of Lisa's abduction, contradicting his alibi. The car was seen driving back and forth between the cafe and the farm, while Narigis claimed to have been sleeping at home, according to his brother and wife. Months after Lisa's body was discovered, experts continued to analyze the evidence using advanced equipment. They found Narigis' DNA on nearly all of Lisa's clothing, including her underwear. Given the high-profile nature of the case, investigators sought additional clues to solidify the evidence against Narigis. As part of their investigation, they traveled to Lithuania to re-question Narigis' wife and brother. Narigis' wife maintained her initial alibi, claiming he was at home between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. However, when detectives spoke with Narigis' younger brother, they finally obtained the information they needed. After being presented with the evidence against Narigis and the details of the crime, the younger brother revealed that Narigis was not at home that evening. According to the younger brother, Narigis returned around 7:30 p.m., covered in dirt, and immediately washed his clothes. When the police began questioning the residents and approached their house, Narigis instructed his brother to tell police he was home at the time of the crime. Narigis later explained that he was afraid of being wrongly accused due to his immigrant status and lack of alibi during the abduction. The younger brother initially believed Narigis innocent, but after learning about the evidence, he realized this wasn't true. A month after murder, a large crowd attended Lisa's funeral, far exceeding the church's capacity of 130 people. To accommodate the mourners, organizers set up benches and large screens outside, allowing everyone to watch the ceremony. 4 months later, the trial began. Narigis' lawyer argued that his client's DNA on Lisa's clothing could be explained by his work in the storehouse. However, the prosecution countered that this explanation didn't hold up, especially regarding Lisa's underwear. The only plausible way Narigis' DNA could have ended up on her underwear was through direct contact. The lawyer failed to provide any evidence supporting Narigis' innocence. At one point, lawyers suggested an alternative theory, that Narigis' younger brother was the real killer. The lawyer failed to address the possibility of DNA manipulation during the trial, which lasted a month and resulted in Narigis being found guilty of murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment in a high-security Swedish prison, which offered relatively comfortable living conditions. Narigis' lawyer attempted to appeal the verdict but was unsuccessful. In 2017, Narigis made a surprising decision when he requested to be deported to a prison in Lithuania. Despite Lithuanian prisons being notoriously worse than Swedish ones, the court granted his request, probably because it would result in substantial cost savings for Swedish taxpayers. It did not take long to understand the reason behind Nerij's decision. He appealed to the Lithuanian court and successfully had his sentence reduced from life to 15 years. However, this victory was short-lived, as the court later overturned the decision, reinstating his life sentence. Unfortunately for Nerijus, he was now stuck in a Lithuanian prison, with no chance of returning to the more comfortable Swedish prison. In August 2022, 5 years after his initial imprisonment, Nerijus has been transferred to another prison in Lithuania, where he encountered another life-threatening situation. During a block transfer, an inmate attacked Nerijus with a shank, causing severe injuries that ultimately led to his death on the way to the hospital. Regarding Nerijus' wife, the question of her involvement in the crime remains unclear. Although police believe it is highly unlikely that she was directly involved in the abduction or murder, they do not rule out the possibility that she may have been aware of her husband's actions and provided a false alibi to help him. If she had been directly involved, experts would have likely found her DNA on Lisa's clothing or belongings. Additionally, Nerijus' younger brother has raised suspicions. Cafe employees reported seeing two men, likely Nerijus and his younger brother, standing near the barn and watching the employees. However, the younger brother's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothing, making his involvement in the murder unlikely. It is possible that the brothers were indeed observing the employees and discussing inappropriate topics, but only Nerijus ultimately committed the crime.